Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to colinslaststand.com. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 103. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by Chris. He's moving soon. Raygun. Chris, how are you today?
Pretty good. Just started the kind of allocating resources to packages part of this entire step.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you move in a little more than a week from when we're recording this.
It's about nine days.
Yeah, it's good to do something every day, right? Like to get something done so that when it comes, you don't really have to do anything at all.
Yeah,
I'm a good mover.
Yeah,
so
I think I'm pretty good at it too. Just because I try to avoid the anxiety of having to get everything together the final day.
I just moved as well. I'm recording in my new house. It's the first episode in the new house, and I'm sitting at a fold up card table and like one of those REI like red chairs that you like bring to a concert or to a beach with, you know, the little cup holder and stuff on it. I don't really have any furniture yet. Starts coming this weekend. The first thing got delivered today though. I bought my TVs. I bought a 65-inch LG 4K TV and a 55-inch one. And the Geek Squad came from Best Buy and hung it on my wall because God knows I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And they were very friendly, very did a good job. But something distressing that I discovered, Chris, in this house that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So they have this, it's a new construction. So there's a lot of cool new like widgets and whatnot in it. But one of the things that was cool was that it's like built for a wall to be hung. So it has like the HDMI cables and everything run through the wall and then run down to the bottom so you can put it in like an entertainment center. But the HDMI cables do not allow for 4K resolution, the ones that the builder used. So I'm like, are you kidding me? This house was built in 2020 and I have 1080p enabled HDMI cables. So I'm not very happy about that.
Yeah, that's a little infuriating.
So I'm going to have to, I have like this thing where they like have to come back in like 29 days or something and then they can fix a bunch of shit. So that's going to be one of the things that needs to be dealt with. But otherwise, this is a lot of house for one man, I got to say.
Yeah.
Don't know that I realized it when I bought it.
You put a little, get a pool table just to fill out a room. Yeah,
I'm going to, so there are 3 bedrooms on the top floor. One is the master. And then there's like a loft also like area on the top floor. I'm in one of the spare bedrooms, the smallest one. There's only 2 windows in this room. They're both to my left here as I sit here, and I can see the house next to me. And the house next to me is not done yet, but I'm wondering if when the people live there, if we can just stare at each other while I record.
Yeah.
And bring a little something extra to the show. So.
Be good. No more trains though, at least.
No more trains. So the neighborhood I'm in, is so new that it's not even on Google Maps yet, which is actually creating a massive problem for me. For my deliveries and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the houses around me are being built or like the plots are sold but haven't been built yet. So there's a lot of positive energy around here. But then everything kind of shuts down at 5 and everyone goes home and then it's just quiet. There's like frogs outside. I see a bunch of spiders, things of this nature.
It's a new world, man.
It really is. And I was standing in my garage and I was like, wow, I can understand why grown men just sit in their garage all day, just tinkering around, because that's what I'm doing. And then I was in the backyard and I'm not so surprised about owning the house. I'm like, wow, I own a piece of property. That was the bigger revelation that I had.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I own a little piece of earth, just a little sliver of it.
It's pretty crazy. I can't even fathom that.
Yeah, I don't even know what I'm doing, to be honest with you over here. It's fun. It's good to be here. I was a little late in getting together with Chris today. We were supposed to start recording about 15 minutes before we did. I have stomach episodes. I have like a really bad stomach and I have had like colon issues my whole life, as I think a lot of the longtime fans know. And I used to get these things that I call episodes where the like crippling pain, shit my brains out. I actually lose feeling in my hands and my feet.
Jesus Christ.
When it happens. And
that's like an alien thing.
It's crazy. I have to take all my clothes off because I like start profusely sweating. It's like the worst pain in the world, and then it just goes away. And I've had this my whole life, and I hadn't actually had it in a while, and then I just had it right before we were supposed to start. I think it's the stress.
Maybe.
That's starting to eat at me a little bit. But thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. This is Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. We record each and every week. You can get the show 3 days early and ad-free by supporting us on patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. We are the biggest game-centric, nerd-centric Patreon in the entire world for podcasting and video and all that kind of stuff. So we really do appreciate your love, your kindness, and your support over there. There are more than 9,000 of you supporting us. Remember also that special perks go along with your patronage, including the ability to submit questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to our show. You can get your name in the credits, and you can even get access to our weekly supplemental podcast called Sacred Symbols Plus, only available to our patrons. Last week, Chris, I had a YouTuber on, a black female YouTuber on. Her name is Mama Micah on YouTube. And we talked a little bit about gaming in terms of race and the wokeness and all of this. And she had a lot of interesting things to say. So everyone should go check that out. The response has been excellent for that. And next week, Chris, I think we'll just do a mailbag. We haven't gotten into the mailbag in a little while.
Yeah.
So we should put our hand in there, and it's kind of like one of those things you use for bingo. You know what I'm talking about? Where you're like, it's like the cylinder and you spin the cylinder.
The bingo, there's a cylinder in bingo?
Yeah, it's like, like a thing. It's almost like a wheel, like and you put the numbers in to the wheel and then you spin it.
I see. Yeah. It's like, okay, I understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a hard thing to describe, isn't it? It's just like a sphere that twirls.
I'm sure there's a name for it. Let's see here. Bingo.
A little
bingo machine.
A bingo spindler or something.
Bingo spin. Let's see. Bingo machine comes up on Amazon. Bingo machines and flashboards.
There's no way it's called a bingo machine.
This is coming up. Bingo machine.
That is sheer insanity.
Wow.
It's really called a bingo machine?
That's what's coming up. It's like coming up on Walmart. It's coming up on
what the hell?
usbingo.com. Bingo machine.
That sounds like if one of my friends guessed that was the name, I would call him like a complete idiot. And then I would go home and Google this. Yeah, it's just straight up a bingo machine. What the hell?
Yeah, there's got to be a better name for it.
This is probably the strangest revelation I've ever had, and the fact that it is in and of itself also strange.
I haven't played bingo in a long time. I like bingo.
Maybe EA announced a bingo game.
They might as well. We'll talk all about EA's press conference sort of live stream thing in a little while. Since we're talking about Sacred Symbols Plus, or ostensibly we were talking about Sacred Symbols Plus, Chris, just in a few hours from when we were recording this, The Last of Us Part 2 will finally be out. Can't believe it.
It's wild.
Did you preload it?
Yeah, I believe it's preloaded. I'm going to check again just to make sure, because, I don't know, sometimes my internet is just completely useless.
Yeah.
But I last I checked, it was downloaded.
I'm all preloaded and ready to go. And,
are you going to play it in 4K? Are you going to like deal with the fact that you're going to have like a wire kind of hanging down?
I don't know how I'm going to, for now, it's just going to be in 1080p, I guess.
God damn, dude.
Yeah, it's kind of too bad, but what can I do? I got to go on Amazon and buy a cable, I guess. I didn't even know that you needed. See, this is where my like technological ignorance comes in, because I just thought an HDMI cable just worked. It's an HDMI cable. But I didn't know there was like different. I know HDMI 2.1, I guess this has something to do with it. I have the HDMI 2.1 TV, but I guess not the appropriate cables. So,
yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot. But Kale Ing wrote into us and said, hey, CM, what's the schedule look like for spoiler casts now that The Last of Us Part 2 is basically here? Thanks. So, Chris, I think what we'll do, like I said, is we'll record the Sacred Symbols Plus episode next week for Mailbag. And then the week after that, so it would go live. Let me look here on the calendar. It would go live on like the 30th. We'll do June 30th. We'll do the spoiler cast and review discussion for The Last of Us, because I assume both of us are going to, or at least I am. I'm going to blaze through this game in the next few days. I do have a social call tomorrow that's going to interrupt me, but
yeah, I'm going to try. I'm going to try and get through it pretty quick, because I don't, This is gonna be a pretty hectic week for me.
Yeah, you got other things to worry about.
I'd imagine if it's as long as people say it is, I imagine I'm probably gonna get through it by then.
Yeah, people are saying it's like 25 hours long. That seems hard to believe, but we'll see. We'll see how long it is. I'm really looking forward to playing it. So yeah, Kale, we'll get that out in the coming weeks. And we did hear you loud and clear about the Final Fantasy VII Remake spoiler cast. Chris and I will do that, but it won't happen until later in the summer. We were, again, going to try to pass it off to some of our colleagues here at Colin's Last Stand, but you said nay. You didn't want that to happen. Josh McKinney wrote into us also on Patreon, said, "Hey, Colin and Chris, I hope the days are treating you both well. My question is simple. Do you think it might be time to add a third voice to Sacred Symbols? I know that you are more successful now than you've ever been, so there might be some trepidation to mess with the recipe, but hear me out. You both acknowledge that your taste and perspectives are limited. The show has been great, but I've seen the strain on you over the last couple of months with everything that has been going on for you personally that might be alleviated with more hands to carry the load. Finally, you might not agree, Colin, but I believe some of your best content came from Beyond when you, Greg, and Clements were hitting your stride. Personally, I think a third voice would only enhance what Sacred Symbols has to offer, so is it time? Chris, what do you think about this, about the idea of adding another person to the show? I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I don't really know. I'm not opposed to it, really. You know, we've been doing this how many weeks in a row? Like several, like 100 and some odd weeks.
103 weeks, yeah.
So you know, it'd definitely be a new style. It would definitely affect the feeling of the show. I do a podcast completely separate from this with 3 people. It's me and 2 other people, and that like alone has a completely different energy. Also, just because it's not, you know, video game oriented, but even just in the makeup of how many people are talking does change the dynamic pretty significantly. I wouldn't be opposed to it. The trouble would be finding who would be that person.
Yeah, I agree. And also, yeah, I don't want to mess with a good thing, really. I'm always open to let me back up. There have been waves. He brought a podcast beyond my first PlayStation podcast that's still going with just totally different people on it now. You might say that my version was the best version, but I'll leave that up to you. But the cast has changed so many times over the years that there's no one on it, and that was originally on it, and it's been that way for years now. And so, yeah, shows change and whatnot, but I'm more, when you do Snark Tank, you guys do it in person, right?
Well, we used to do it in person, but obviously the whole pandemic kind of made it kind of hard to do. Obviously, Sweeney and I are in the same place, so it was easy for us, but obviously Derek doesn't live with us, so we had to make the switch over to Discord, and I just kind of pass it off to an editor who just kind of edits our separate tracks.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of like how you record really does kind of change like everything about something. Like the makeup of a podcast is drastically impacted by the number of people you have on it. I think like the second it goes above 3, I think it gets like way too noisy and just like completely illegible. And with one person, like, and I know Bill Burr does a podcast like just by himself where he's just like ranting into a microphone. And that's like obviously like a completely different style than, you know, a back and forth like this. I don't know. It's a thing to think about, I guess.
Yeah, we'll think about it. Because people have been bringing that up and doing video. I'm really opposed to doing video, just not because it wouldn't be nice to do video, but it would just make the editing so much more obnoxious for Dustin. No. And because he makes hundreds of cuts in every show. That's why the show sounds so good, by the way. So I don't know that I really want to mess with that. The idea is we could like put trailers and gameplay and stuff over this stuff, but I don't know that there's really a demand for that. And then we're going to get caught up in the whole copyright strike thing on YouTube. People have to understand with video that it adds a lot of stress. But when I think about the podcast I listen to a political podcast from National Review called The Editors that I really like. They all record separately, and there's usually 3 or 4 of them on there. And the show is fun. I really like it, but because there's so many of them, it basically just becomes like each person talks in turn for like 5 minutes at a time and then kicks it over to the next person and so on. Because like you said, otherwise it gets a little chaotic. So We're open to all suggestions, but as the question said, we're doing better than ever, both on Patreon and in downloads. So the show as it is, I think, is working fine for most people. But of course, you can keep that feedback coming, and I'll probably just continue to ignore it.
There's definitely a if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of, you know, air about this whole situation where it's like, you don't necessarily want to tamper too much.
Right, exactly. This is our livelihood. We don't want to mess with it too much, but of course, keep that feedback coming. And just as another reminder, our game Twin Breaker is out, came out back in March. Ports are still coming. We're going to have more information on that soon outside of PS4 and Vita. All of the physical copies are shipping. More and more people are getting them every day. So thank you so much for supporting us. Go check it out on PS4 and Vita if you haven't already. Okay. So, Chris, there's some things to talk about. Before we get into the news, I mean, I have a lot of things here from the audience that I wanted to get through.
Yeah.
And a lot of chatter from the PlayStation 5 event. Obviously, we covered that in detail last week on episode 102. But I did want to say the PlayStation 5 event was a smash hit. Garnered more than 7 million concurrent viewers at its peak, with an average of 4 million viewers throughout the broadcast. Multiple trailers and reveal videos from the event are in the millions of plays each. Outside of the event, this was the most watched live stream gaming event ever, including all of the E3 press conferences. In reflection, now that we're about a week away from having seen it and seeing the machine, we're going to get into all the specifics, but just generally speaking, how do you feel in hindsight about how Sony did?
Yeah, I thought they did really well. I thought it was a good show. I thought it was, they showed enough to kind of give the impression that there was a lot to look forward to on the machine, which I think makes, whatever price point they launch at probably, an easier pill to swallow if they can expect, oh, hey, Horizon exists. Oh, hey, Spider-Man exists. Oh, neat. And also just a bunch of independent games. I didn't think everything looked great, but nothing looked like bad or uninteresting, except for the stuff that I'm just kind of already kind of at odds with in the first place, like a sports game or anything that I'm immediately like my brain's shutting off when I see it. But it was a good event, and the machine I think is starting to grow on people a little bit. I still think the digital version looks the most appealing. I don't know. I keep seeing people who think I like the asymmetrical hump on the bottom of the machine. And I'm like, I just can't. I can't fathom that. But it was a good event, I thought.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, the more I've thought about it, the more, not that I've had a lot of time to marinate on it because of just what's going on in life right now, but the more I've thought about it, the more I've been reinforced that I think it was a good showing. I think that they did much of what they needed to do. I'm a little confused about showing the box still and not having a price point, and now they've kind of lost control of the message a little bit, because now all these sites are putting up random prices and they're trying to garner. Like, I was even reading an interview with Jim Ryan from Sony where he was saying, now we're kind of trying to chronicle the pre-order numbers and stuff, and I'm like, what are you fucking talking about, chronicling the pre-order numbers? The console's not available for pre-order. You don't even know how much it costs yet. So you're letting all these individual merchants put up random prices, and then you're going to gauge the demand for the console based on that. That to me was a little strange, because I remember so well when PS4 went on pre-order in 2013 at E3. I remember it very well. I was at IGN and I pre-ordered it that day. And I'm starting to get a little nervous that because they're being a little disorganized with this, that we're not going to, and because they're going to be supply constrained, that I might not be able to get a console. I want to get two of them if possible. So one of each of these, frankly, vaginal looking consoles.
Yeah.
But I'm a little concerned about their approach with the pricing, because this is probably why you wouldn't want to show the box. I feel like that's my only complaint, is that the games look great. I think that there's a lot to be excited about, and it's cool that we saw the machine, but I think you only show the machine when you're ready to show pricing and even the release date. So I know that they'll have more to say in August, I think, but
yeah, I think so. I wonder if they're kind of allowing speculation to kind of see like what the reaction is to a lot of the speculated prices, because I think everybody kind of understands that there was no real price announced. Like anybody who thinks that like the PS5 is going to be $700, like they're not going to believe that if Sony just comes out and says like, oh, hey, yeah, no, it's not, it'll be an easy thing to kind of rectify. So I feel like they're probably gauging how people feel about pricing based on like some of the leaks that have come out and some of the speculative price points that retailers have kind of put out, which I don't necessarily think is all that stupid, because I mean, the machine's guaranteed to sell a pretty decent amount anyway. Can't hurt to kind of do a little bit of unintentional opposition research, kind of.
Yeah, it's actually a great point, Chris. maybe they are trying to flesh this out and just see how people respond to these different prices. They might even be feeding their partners different prices.
Yeah.
Just to see. And of course, there's all this difference between yen and pounds and American dollars and euro and stuff like that. So that's causing a lot of confusion as well. I think people are speculating the price being way too low. I think some people are talking about a $400 machine. I would find that almost impossible to believe. But the $700 thing sounds crazy too. And in fact, Noah J. Stevens wrote into us on Patreon. He says, "Hey, CNC, the price of the PS5 is still a mystery to us. Some listings on sites like PlayAsia have pointed to a $700 price point, but I think that's simply too much. Not to mention, it is most likely a placeholder price and not representative of what to expect. I'm betting on the all-digital model being $400 and the base model being $500. What do you fellas think of this much anticipated price point?" So we talked a little bit about it last week, and I feel $400 I think is way too cheap. I think that I still say that the digital version will be $499, the disc version will be $599.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the price? What are you thinking?
I think that's about accurate. I don't think the base model is going to be that high. I think the base model is going to be like in the middle. I think it's going to be, what is it, 550 or like in the middle. I don't think they're going to go to 600 because I think 600 might feel a little bit too much for the average person, even if they do the whole like, oh, it's not 600, it's $599. Even then, I still feel like it's a lot. So I think they're probably going to go $549 or $550, something like that. And then the digital is going to be $499.
So only a $50 difference between the Blu-ray drive and the solid state one, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's generally kind of how, like, the pricing of that component is generally about that much. So, or at least that much in relation to the overall machine. So I think that's probably a good bet. Granted, $549, like, it's not exactly a sexy price point, but I do still think, 500 is a bit too low and like 600 is a bit too high. And I think that's probably like the safest way they're going to go about it. And I do think they're going to be pushing the digital model anyway. So chances are they're probably going to want to make the digital version like a more appealing price, not only in the fact that it's lower, but also just in like the weird kind of, brain wormy kind of thing where we just kind of like repeating numbers. I feel like that might be some like deeper level of strategy.
It could be. I mean, this Noah throws out the $400 price point, which I know some people have been throwing out. That would be really unbelievable if they were able to do that. Remembering, of course, that PS4 cost $400 in 2013 money, which means the PS5 would be a cheaper machine. It just seems absolutely impossible, but I could be wrong. Remember, Chris, that we had that Bloomberg leak a while ago about the cost of manufacture being $450, but we didn't know that there were two SKUs then. And so I'm wondering which one they're talking about there as well, because that would give us a little bit of insight. If you even wanted to go $449.99 and break even, could you do that? I was reading some stuff from people smarter than me in the technological space. Doesn't take a lot. They were saying that it's possible that the hard drive will be so much more substantial in the solid state version that they could even be potentially priced the same. In other words, you would get like a bigger hard drive in the digital version, and then you would get the Blu-ray drive with a smaller drive in the physical version, and then they would cost the same. I think that would be pretty interesting, but I don't know. Then you don't differentiate them enough. There's got to be something to differentiate them and make one more appealing than the other. This is what happened with PS3, by the way. People forget there was a 20 gig PS3 model that was, briefly on the market and all this. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens, but I'm anticipating, I guess Chris and I are both in the same space. I don't think that they know how much this thing is going to cost yet. I think that they have an idea of what their parameters are. I think they're waiting for Xbox. I think Xbox is waiting for PlayStation. At some point, someone's going to have to shit or get off the pot because they're going to have to start taking actual pre-orders here.
Yeah. If I were a betting man, I would say Microsoft is probably going to go and just sort of come out with their price at their July event and start racking in those pre-orders first.
What do you think their console will cost?
I think probably about the same. I think, although I think their digital, I think they might have just like because there's rumors of like a kind of a Lockhart, a codename Lockhart system, which is basically rumored to be just a Series X, but a digital version like they did with the Xbox One and like PlayStation is doing with the PS5. So if I were to bet, I would say that the base version would probably be $499, and then the digital version would be $449. I think they would.
Be huge, man.
I think they would probably have just because their software is so ubiquitous. I feel like they have a little bit more leeway as far as like cutting price down, and also the machine might be. It's hard to really gauge because we don't know how much that machine costs to build, but I don't know. It's all just fucking complete guesses at this point.
Yeah, it's just all speculation. It's exciting because we have a little bit more information to work with now, but
yeah.
See, that would be really tantalizing to get a $449 Xbox Series X out, because that would be cheaper than the Xbox One launched at in 2013 in 2020 money. So
we'll see.
Technology does become cheaper, but yeah, I don't know. We'll find out. I'm really excited to see, but the PlayAsia $700 thing. And by the way, I have a relationship with PlayAsia, so I should just throw that out there. They're actually the people that help us with the physical version along with East Asia Soft of our game. So I do want to throw that out there. And obviously no insult to them, quite the contrary. I think the $700 price point is the maximum that they expect it's going to be, so that if they hit your credit card, then you don't owe them anything. If anything, they owe you money. So I think that's the reason why a lot of speculative pre-orders are always higher than they end up being. So, and plus that would be an import as well. They're not going to have the American or European version. They'll have the Japanese one or the Southeast Asian one. So there is that. Judah S wrote into us. There's a little bit of confusion about this. I was surprised about this. Judah, you're not alone in your inquiry here. He says, "Hey boys, hope all is well. First off, congratulations, Colin, on the new home. I hope it serves you well for years to come. Thank you. Other than my dog pissing all over my hardwood floors, it's going great. I just wanted to inquire about something that caught my eye during the PS5 showcase. Before the trailer for Returnal was shown, I couldn't help but notice that a PS Studios logo was shown. What do you guys think this means? I'm pretty sure if Housemarque was bought by Sony, we would know. Thanks for all you guys do and keep on keeping on." So this new logo, which by the way, I just don't like. The more we talk about it, the more I just don't. I just miss the old text.
Yeah.
The Sony Interactive Entertainment text. But this logo is really throwing a lot of people for a loop because it was being shown after every first and second party game, or before. And so when they showed games like from Housemarque, which Sony doesn't own, people were like, wow, did they buy Housemarque? Did they buy X? Did they buy Y? Did they buy Z? You got to remember, Judah and others, that Sony is still publishing these games and paying for them. So they're all PlayStation Studios games, just like that old Sony Interactive Entertainment or Sony Computer Entertainment text would show up even before second party games too. So I think people are just getting a little confused because nothing has really changed, just the logo.
Yeah.
The whole treatment of the game otherwise has been exactly the same. So when you see a game like Returnal, which looks awesome, from Housemarque, my boys, no, Sony did not buy Housemarque, and Sony did not buy some of these other studios that were being shown off as well, like Sumo Digital with the Sackboy game that also appeared there. It's just indicating that Sony has paid for the game and it's exclusive. So any confusion should be promptly dispelled by my explanation. Now let's get into some of these other things. I don't know if the level of confusion with some of this stuff is earned from the show. It's not like Mark Cerny's Power Hour where there was like a lot of stuff to clean up.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there has been a lot of confusion with some of this stuff. So let's talk. Kyle Carroll wrote into us and said, "Hey boys, I hope you're both having a great day and the big moves are going well. So earlier this week, Bloomberg put out an article attempting to clear up some confusion surrounding Spider-Man Miles Morales after the PS5 reveal event. Someone with insider knowledge at Insomniac confirmed with them that the game will be a smaller standalone title and is not an expansion, instead comparing the game to something more akin to Infamous First Light, Uncharted Lost Legacy, or Ratchet & Clank Quest for Booty. Also, there was no indication if the game will make it on the PS4, and it seems like players who don't upgrade to PS5 will be left out in the cold. This may be a hot take, but I would prefer developers skip these types of releases entirely and allocate more time to resources into a full-blown sequel. Also, I can't help but be worried about paying $60 for a smaller and very similar experience we just had with the original. Even more so if the PS5's games are higher in price compared to PS4. What do you guys think about smaller standalone titles like these? Do you think it would be better if Insomniac would work Miles' story into Spider-Man 2 somehow? Am I overthinking all of this? Thank you for all that you guys do, and stay safe out there. Thank you, Kyle. So, Chris, I'm a little surprised by Kyle's letter because I told you guys that this was an expansion. in like a standalone expansion like Infamous First Light. I think I told you that, right? In the last episode.
You did speculate that was what the intention of the release was, yeah.
Yeah, because it's just too soon for Spider-Man 2. So you can just do the math and realize that this is a launch game. This will come out in November. And so it must have been a standalone game, and I used Infamous First Light as the example. Uncharted Lost Legacy is one that other people are using. Ratchet & Clank Quest for Booty is not really a standalone expansion, but I understand what you're saying. But there are a few things here, Chris, that he wants us to break down. The first thing is that I think he's overestimating the price. I don't think this game's going to be $60. If it's anything like First Light or Lost Legacy, I think those were both $40 when they came out. I could be wrong, but I thought they were both $40. Maybe Lost Legacy was $60, but I don't think so. So I don't think you're going to be paying full price for this experience, this Miles Morales experience. But Chris, how do you feel about this Miles story kind of being broken out as opposed to being in Spider-Man 2? Because they did say in an interview, I think it was with someone from Insomniac, saying that Spider-Man 2 will continue basically the story of Peter Parker. So not a huge surprise there. But how do you feel about them not like making this the next mainline game?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Kyle in some ways. I kind of don't really care much for these kind of interstitial kind of single player like releases that aren't sequels but are kind of sequels, and they just sort of meander about in this weird limbo. I would have preferred to just wait another year for a proper Spider-Man 2 and just kind of have Miles be the protagonist. Like that would have been fine by me. Like maybe they just feel like, oh, people don't care about Miles, so we can't put him in like a full sequel. But it's like, part of me can't. I can't also just think like if you think that, why even make the expansion in the first place? You know, it seems just kind of weird. It also feels a little bit too soon to be playing a sequel type experience to this game. I don't know. The messaging on it was a little bit confusing because I think it said captured on PS5 also, if I remember correctly. So it was a lot of the messaging around this thing was weird, but I don't know. I'm typically not huge on these smaller kind of 1.5 games. I didn't play First Light or Lost Legacy specifically because I can't bother. But I would hope that at least this one's good enough to justify its existence. I mean, the gameplay was really good in the first game, so I'd imagine it's probably more of the same and probably a little bit more fleshed out, especially if it's exclusive to PS5 and not on PS4 as it seems to be suggested that it isn't.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it still feels a bit soon.
It does feel soon, but I mean, so I don't think anyone was blown away by First Light. It was a cool idea. It had like a cool arena combat section, which I liked, but it came out pretty quick. It came out, I think, the same year that Second Son came out, if not just early the next year. Yeah. So this is going to be, this does give us a little bit more time. And I do have to say, just for argument's sake, although I've not played it yet, is that a lot of people love Lost Legacy. So Sony might be getting results in terms of what people are looking for in these smaller, I don't want to say bite-sized experiences because that's not true, but something that is kind of an interstitial that lets them explore a world or characters that they otherwise wouldn't explore. And they must be getting some positive feedback about that. But I think it's a little weird just in the sense that I thought that they were selling, and I don't want to, this is a spoiler for the original Spider-Man. You can fast forward 30 seconds or whatever if you don't want to hear it. But Miles Morales is in the original, and it seemed like they were setting him up to be the hero of the second game. So it is a little weird that they're not doing that with the proper sequel. But if I were a Spider-Man fan, and I do like the games a lot, I would actually be excited about this because it means that you're getting more. You're not just getting Spider-Man, Miles Morales, or Spider-Man 2. You're actually getting both. Yeah. And so there's something really tantalizing about that to me. I can't hate on going back to the world of Spider-Man, the Manhattan, because I think the game feels so good to play. Yeah. So giving us more of that. Plus, they made this huge map, and they probably want to get more use out of it before they do whatever they do in Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. I also think that there might be some. My assumption, and I have no real way of proving any of this. This is just kind of my gut feeling, is that because Spider-Man and God of War came out in the same year, their sequels would be ready at about the same time, and I would imagine that maybe God of War will come out first, and then this interstitial title in Spider-Man will give them a little bit more time to kind of space out the sequel and kind of justify like, hey, maybe Spider-Man 2 doesn't come out 3 years after Spider-Man 1. Maybe it comes out like 4 years, and it's actually like an okay amount of time to wait because you had this interstitial title and it gives God of War room to shine and kind of spaces those big marquee titles out from each other. That feels like something that might be happening. That's just a gut feeling, though. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, God of War 2, probably 2022. You assume they haven't even shown it yet. They did say later on that Horizon Forbidden West is going to be out in 2021. So that would spread Horizon out from 2017 to 2021. God of War is 2018. So you can kind of do the math from there. So you might be right about that. I also just think that from a very simplistic marketing standpoint, Sony wants to have a huge exclusive on PS5. And I don't know that it's going to get any bigger than the Spider-Man game. So there's that to consider as well. Although, so going to what you said about the trailers, Insomniac's trailers, both, so for Ratchet and Clank and for Spider-Man, both notably said that the games were captured on PS5, which pretty much none of the other trailers said notably. And I tweeted out about that. I was like, is there something to this? Are they going to put this game out on PS4? Now, it seems that like the Ratchet and Clank game just won't work on PS4. And they've actually, Insomniac and Sony have used verbiage that seems to indicate that these are conclusively PS5 exclusive games. But I thought that was weird that they called that out. Like, you didn't see that at the end of like the Demon's Souls trailer or the end of the Sackboy Big Adventure trailer or anything like that. You only really saw that in these two Insomniac trailers. So it did give me a little bit of pause when I noticed that. I only noticed that after when I was watching them again.
Yeah.
Later on. So we'll see how this all kind of pans out for Insomniac in these games, but I'm really looking forward to it. And Miles Morales should be a launch game. Maybe it'll be like Drive Club though and be a year late.
No, I hope
we'll find out. The summer months are upon us, which for many of us means competing with airborne allergens as we attempt to go outside, hang out with friends and family, do some yard work, and maybe, God forbid, get some sunshine for once. If you proudly live the hermit lifestyle like I do, you may think you're free from air pollutants, allergens, mold, and the like. But even if you're inside at any time of year, airborne pollution is worse than you probably think it is. In fact, the American Environmental Protection Agency has noted that indoor air pollution can be up to 5 times worse than outdoor air pollution. And a full 80% of human beings live in urban areas where air quality is below the standard necessary for good health. That's where Molecule's air purifiers come into play. Molecule is unique in that its PICO technology, that stands for photoelectrochemical oxidation, destroys airborne pollutants like viruses, bacteria, mold, chemicals, and other allergens, as opposed to merely capturing them in a filter. Even HEPA filters, based on half-century-old technology, simply aren't up to the task. But Molecule is. Better yet, Molecule's air purifiers come in different sizes, catered to the size of the room you're looking to safeguard against airborne allergens. The Molecule Air, for instance, is for rooms up to 600 square feet, while the Air Mini works best in smaller rooms, around 250 square feet. These Molecule models, amongst others, are tested and vetted by reliable third parties, and they look great too, with sleek and modern aesthetics that will fit in nicely with your home decor, all the while destroying the airborne viruses, mold, allergens, and bacteria that are all around you. It's time to stand against poor indoor air quality with Molecule. To try their products for yourself and see how the indoor air pollution you live in and around can be cleaned up and made healthier, head to molecule.com. That's MOLEKULE.com, and use the code SYMBOLS10, that's SYMBOLS 10 at checkout to receive 10% off your first air purifier order. Again, head to molecule.com, use the code SYMBOLS10 at checkout, and receive 10% off your first air purifier from Molecule. It's time to stand for clean air and experience the health effects that come along with it. Molecule can help. All right, we have another question that's interesting here. We didn't get too into this. Some people complained about this. I understand why, but we recorded our show right after the event, so a lot of this stuff wasn't really happening, or we didn't get a lot of verbiage about this. But Jared Kellogg wrote in, keeper of the great Kellogg fortune, of course. He says, "Hey, CNC, just wanted to inquire about your thoughts on Sony's investment in timed exclusives during last week's show. Games like Oddworld, Soulstorm, Ghostwire Tokyo, and Deathloop were all on track to be multi-platform based on prior coverage and marketing lingo, so it was bizarre for me to see them all take the money and run. I get that Oddworld Inhabitants is most certainly putting this money to good use given their very independent, decentralized development practices, but Bethesda Games in particular feels rather tasteless for doing this. They're a private company with plenty of money, and it feels like they made a cheap deal because the sales of both of these developers' prior games, Dishonored 2 and Evil Within 2, both fantastic games by the way, were hurt so much by the company's decision to stop sending out review copies for a period of time. By the way, Bethesda is technically part of a public company, but I understand what you're saying. As a multi-platform gamer, I can't help but feel like these are low blows and hypocritical ones given the fact that Microsoft consistently and deservedly got lambasted this past generation for stealing away third-party games for arbitrary timed exclusivity. What do both of you think, though? As always, thanks for everything. The show is just the most honest, jam-packed, and analytical game podcast out there. So just know how much we appreciate it. Never change. Thank you for all of that, Jared. So a lot of this was lost on me when I was watching the show and just doing my research afterwards. I went to GameSpot, and this was last updated on the 12th, so there's probably some new information here, but it seems that the following games are timed exclusives, so they will be on PS5 first. Bugsnax, Godfall, Goodbye Volcano High, Jet the Far Shore, Kena Bridge of Spirits, Little Devil Inside, Oddworld Soulstorm, Project Athea, Solar Ash, and Stray. And then it says here on GameSpot that Deathloop and Ghostwire, so the two Bethesda published games from Arcane and from Tango, respectively, are unconfirmed exclusives. I don't know if that's been confirmed since then. I couldn't find anything definitive about that. I guess it makes sense that they would talk only about either timed exclusives or really big games. So they talked about Grand Theft Auto 5. That's obviously not exclusive. NBA 2K1, Resident Evil Village. These are not going to be exclusive games. But it is interesting that they seem to be investing in this timed exclusivity. And you know what I was thinking about when I saw this, Chris, was this doesn't always work out well for the IP owner. I actually agree with some of what Jared is saying here. I think about Titanfall being timed exclusive to Xbox One and Xbox 360, as people might recall. There was an Xbox 360 edition of Titanfall as well. And how Titanfall never really took off because it was locked to these consoles. And Titanfall 2, while a very critically acclaimed game, didn't exactly light the world on fire, and clearly Respawn and EA are in no rush to bring the series back, although Apex Legends takes part in that universe. So do you feel like this is a good move for Sony to have locked some of these games down? Project Athea, for instance, is a pretty big game. And do you think that it'll work out for those that are taking Sony's money, because it might end up adversely affecting them later on when the game migrates?
I don't generally like this practice, especially, but I think a lot of it does come down to like, how long is this really for? Because there are some games that were locked on, or even some DLC or different like in-game add-ons and in-game components that were locked on PlayStation and only on PlayStation for like a year. I remember the original Destiny content partnership that was like, oh yeah, you know, really, really great exotic weapons will be available 1 year later on other platforms. And it's like, what? A year? Are you serious? That's so insane. So I think a lot of like whether or not this is like something that's going to really harm those games really depends on for how long and how long the time is for these exclusivity deals. But generally speaking, I don't like it when a game is kind of announced as, you know, a multi-platform thing and then it just suddenly kind of gets swept away. I think you should probably announce your game when you know about all this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting that Bethesda in particular seems to have kind of taken the money that they might not really need in order to do this. I'm reading stories on gamesindustry.biz and Eurogamer from the same date that GameSpot's article was updated, saying that the games are PS5 exclusive at launch, so Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. But this is based on verbiage on PlayStation blog saying quote, released exclusively for console on the PlayStation 5. And Deathloop comes out probably at launch for PS5, and then Ghostwire will come out in 2021. Eurogamer kind of reiterates the same thing. So I don't know about this. I don't know that I'm totally convinced that this is actually happening, but we'll see, because it would be very interesting. EA was the publisher of Titanfall, obviously on Xbox One at first. And so it's not unusual for big third parties to do exclusives. It's just more uncommon now. And it is worth noting that it seems that it's going to be less uncommon. So a lot of the games that we saw on the PS5 stream are actually going to be on PS5 at least first, if not exclusively, except for some of those big guns. So we will keep an eye on how that all develops. I'd be interested to hear more from Bethesda on this.
Yeah.
But like you said, Oddworld Inhabitants, for instance, taking that money, I mean, that's not a huge surprise. They've also been in bed with PlayStation for a long time.
Yeah.
So no big deal here. But it is interesting seeing like Square Enix and Bandai Namco and others have their exclusives on here as well. So Sony's throwing that money around. And I think that people know that the likelihood of success is going to be greater on PlayStation than it is on Xbox. That could change, but I think that's what the math says right now.
Yeah. That was also the assumption in the 360 days also. Like at the end of the 360, they were like, oh yeah, I'll put my game on Xbox One. The 360's kicking ass. And it's like,
right. That's true. That's a great point.
You got to be careful.
That's a good point. Yeah, because I think that's kind of where Titanfall came from. I think that if EA could have undone that, they would have.
Yeah.
But and I think that Insomniac, even with Sunset Overdrive, I think is a similar situation. So we will keep an eye on it. Thank you, Jared, for your comprehensive question. Since we're talking about The Last of Us 2 next week, and the game comes out just in a few hours from when we're going to finish recording this, Clark Petrie wrote into us. Said, hey, gents, this Friday I'm taking a day off explicitly to play The Last of Us Part 2, something I've never done for any other game. Being in the industry, I'm sure it's different, but do either of you have similar memories? My only other comparison was Metal Gear Solid 2 coming out shortly before Thanksgiving break in college. I canceled going home just to play the game thoroughly. Cheers. So a lot of people, I'm sure, are going to be taking time off to play this game. I remember when the game was delayed the first time, people were mad because they had already put their time in. Have you ever done that before for a game? Like just taken time off or kind of eschewed your, I hate that word, your responsibilities, whatever they might be, collegiate responsibilities or school, whatever. Yeah.
I recall in 2012 when Halo 4 came out, I was in college, and that was like, I think my second year. Yeah, my second year in college. And I had a really long day of classes that day. And I got there in the morning, and I had met up with some of my friends in the like one of the lounge rooms, one of the lounge areas. We were just talking about like all the shit we had to do, and it was like, isn't it frustrating that we're not just at home like playing Halo with each other, because it was like the day after launch or something. And we were just talking, and we just got really excited, and then we were like, do you just want to just go home? And we just all just went home. And it was a lot of it was a fun little memory. That was probably the only college memory that I have, honestly. Because
I don't remember anything else about college. It sounded like a baby was screaming in the background.
Yeah, well, my apartment, as it currently exists, is directly next to the pool house, and for some reason they've decided that, hey, the pool's open, despite, the plague.
Right.
So,
right.
there's a baby screaming and drowning in the pool.
Yeah, that baby's going down.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Notice the silence.
Yeah, now that baby's dead. So, yeah, I don't know that I ever took time off from school to play games in my younger days. I would play a lot of games after school and on weekends. What came to mind for me with this was, though, when the Star Wars special editions came out in 97, they released A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi with like all of that shit that everyone hates now in it. Like Jabba's getting his tail stepped on in A New Hope and whatever.
Yeah.
And like the extra dancers in Jedi. But at the time, it was really exciting, and we were waiting for episode 1, and my mom took me out of school each of those Fridays. I think it was like January, February, March or something like that, to go see them. And that was exciting. But typically speaking, my parents were pretty strict about sending me to school, no matter how much I wanted to try to get out of it.
Yeah.
I did cut sometimes, though. All right, we have a few corrections to get into, and then we will begin the rest of the show in earnest. I think these are all pretty much directed at me, so you can sit easy. Drew Sleazer wrote into us and said, Lollyho CNC, as your resident Riot nerd, I'm assuming no one else here puts as much time into League or Valorant as I wanted to offer a correction regarding Riot's console plans from last week. League of Legends Wild Rift is a rebuilt version of League of Legends, specifically to cater to a different control style, since the traditional mouse and keyboard MOBA is impossible to emulate elsewhere. It will be launching on mobile first in 2020 and then console coming sometime after, according to the website. They also have a publishing arm, Riot Forge, that will be publishing League-related games from outside developers to consoles, but the website notes that not all games will be on all platforms. So this is in regards to, we were talking about Valorant and the possibility that would be ported.
Yeah.
And I said that would be Riot's first console game. It technically still will be, because Wild Rift isn't out yet, but I didn't even know that about Wild Rift. So thank you, Drew, for the correction. You're probably way too nerdy to be listening to this show, but we'll let you stick around for the time being. Garrett Bland wrote in. What'd you say?
No, I didn't say anything. Garrett Bland is a great name.
Garrett Bland wrote in. It is a great name. He says, hey, CNC, quick clarification on last week's episode about Gearbox's Godfall. This game is not developed by Gearbox Studios, but published by Gearbox Publishing. It is developed by Counterplay Games, who also made a free-to-play digital card game called Duelist. Gearbox Publishing has published some notable games, including Astroneer, Risk of Rain 2, Banner Saga Trilogy, Hello Neighbor, We Happy Few, and the physical edition of Fortnite back in the day. Thanks, and please save the babies. Thank you, Garrett. I actually knew this. I don't know why I didn't say that, but it is a worthy correction because I did say that Gearbox was making it.
Shut up, Garrett. Nobody cares.
Shut up, Garrett, you loser.
No, that's true. Risk of Rain 2 is actually pretty good.
Yeah, they actually sent us that game when it came out, but I had still not played it. So I remember the original Risk of Rain, I think, was on Vita.
Oh, yeah. It's completely, it's not even close to the same game. It's like
really?
It might as well not even be called Risk of Rain 2, but like, whatever. It's pretty good still.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'll get to it eventually, but we know that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Dick Whiskey wrote into us and said, tantalizing Colin and baffling Chris. I can't believe you forced me to do this, but although Mr. Sinister is a villain in Marvel Comics, he is primarily an X-Men villain and not part of the Sinister Six, which, let's be honest, would make complete sense. With so many iterations over the years, the fact that Shocker is your favorite member pretty much proves you close their fridge door with your hip. And to think I've been playing the Mega Man Legacy Collection recently because of you, yet you get on here and give me my nerdy little black heart agita. I think we should see other people for a little while. Thank you, Blame Canada. And I already miss you. Thank you, Dick Whiskey. So we were talking about the Sinister Six. I thought Mr. Sinister was in the Sinister Six.
No,
but I guess not. Why didn't you correct me then?
Because I thought that was the case, but I also wasn't super sure, and I didn't want to be wrong.
Oh,
you know.
Okay.
So I was like, I'll let that go. But like,
fair enough.
I'm pretty sure the Sinister Six usually is like, it's who the fuck is it? It's like Vulture,
Scorpion.
Yeah, Vulture, Scorpion. Dr. Octopus is usually in there, I think. Rhino, Electro, maybe, and then like some other. The sixth person always gets rotated in.
Mysterio, right?
Mysterio, yeah. Oh, I love Mysterio. Stupid little fishbowl head.
Yeah, but, Shocker's my guy.
Shocker's great. There's a great clip from the 90s animated series. If you look, I'm sure you'll find if you look up like Spider-Man chasing Shocker. And it's the most angry Spider-Man line I've ever seen. He's just like really hamming it up. He's like, Shocker, I'll chase you to the ends of the earth. And it's just the most insane shit. But it's so good.
Especially because Shocker's like so ineffective.
Yeah,
it's like,
he's just a guy. He's just a guy in a quilt.
I know. I don't know why. I don't know why I was so attracted to that character, but I was. We have a little bit of a difference of opinion here that Matthias Gudmundsson wanted to write in. Mm-hmm. Sorry if I butchered your name. I'm sure I did. He said, hey, CNC, first time posting since recently becoming a patron after almost 2 years of listening on free feeds. Thank you, Matthias, and welcome. Colin, last episode you said that Ratchet & Clank Reimagining fixed Ratchet & Clank. So he's talking about how I said it fixed their relationship in the first game. I recently played the original Ratchet & Clank on the Vita, and I could not disagree more. In the original, these two are two very distinct characters with different values and different goals. They come into conflict with each other when Clank's naivete almost gets them killed. While, yes, Ratchet becomes mean to Clank, most of his jabs at the robot are humorous, so it doesn't feel uncomfortable to me at all. Over the course of their journey, they learn to set aside their differences to prevail against the game's villain and become actual friends. In the sequels, their friendship feels earned and believable because you know what they've been through together. The reimagining undoes all this character development, and upon meeting each other, they instantly become best buds with almost no chemistry between them. It feels very unnatural. This is one of my many reasons why, apart from gameplay and visuals, the original will always be superior to me. Well, Matthias, I wanted to read that out because I hear you, but I just don't agree. I just do not agree. I just feel like Ratchet and Clank's relationship in the original PS2 game is so uncomfortable. I don't want them to not like each other, and they don't like each other.
I have very little experience with this series, but I will say that you could argue that because the originals are the reason why the series is still alive today, that maybe there was something kind of special about that kind of... What the Do you hear that?
Yeah.
God damn it. This fucking technology's always listening. I don't even remember what I was saying. Screw it. Fuck me.
Forget it. Thanks, Nextel, for interrupting us.
I'm going to go destroy my phone real quick.
Ryan T. Mandel has a question for us as we get out of this opening segment, finally liberating us from it.
Yeah.
Says, good day, Colin and Chris. In your opinion, which is correct? Caramel or caramel? Caramel or caramel? So it's caramel or caramel? Right?
Yeah. What do you say?
Caramel.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you get caramel out of that.
Yeah, no, you got to be a psychopath to say caramel. I don't understand. Just it's spelled for you.
Yeah, it says caramel. I mean, it's what it says. Caramel. It's Caramel. Caramel.
I hate that this is an argument for some people.
whenever someone says caramel, I notice it. I never say anything, but I notice it, and I judge you when you say it. I don't even like caramel, by the way.
You don't like caramel?
So no, it doesn't really do it for me.
You don't like the little candy apples or whatever the hell?
No. If I'm gonna have an apple, I'm gonna have an apple.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's no reason to slather it in some fucking syrup.
I know, it's like, it's kind of gross. You know, it's like, what? It's an apple, man. It's a fucking apple. It's not a chocolate chip cookie. You know, we don't need to do this.
If you're gonna,
to it.
Yeah, I feel like if you're gonna eat healthy, you might as well just eat healthy. You know, there's no reason to try to trick yourself into thinking that you're enjoying it.
How about? Well, didn't we brought this up last week when I was talking about syrup versus syrup? It's the same thing. It's like, who says syrup?
People say syrup.
But people say it. People say that. I feel like this is what the inspiration for Ryan's question was.
That's disgusting.
Us talking about that.
I really hate
it's horrible. That. It's horrible. But I make the same argument with Mario. You know, I've been beaten into submission to say Mario, but it clearly says Mario.
Well,
Mario.
Well,
Mario.
How would you spell Mario?
I don't know that. I don't know. Maybe it would be the same way. Maybe the same exact way.
Yeah, it wouldn't be like Morio, like Morio.
Morio. Yeah, I don't. Maybe not. I had this argument though with a friend of mine at IGN back in the day because his wife's name is Mariel, Mariel, and he would make fun of me for saying Mario, but I'm like, your wife's name is Mariel. If you just remove the EL and replace it with an O, it would be Mario.
Yeah, if you change the
So I always felt like that was a weak argument. That was a weak argument on his part.
Yeah.
But then, you know, I think he thought I was like making fun of his wife, and I wasn't. And so it was like, you know,
that's a whole situation.
Your wife. Yeah, it's like, I'm not, you know, whatever. All right. Let's get into the games we're playing, Chris. It says here that you're just waiting for The Last of Us Part 2 patiently.
Yeah, I have like Resident Evil 7 like installed. It doesn't feel like I really will have much time to dive into anything except one thing, and that thing might as well be The Last of Us.
Oh, definitely. It might as well be. It should definitely be that.
Yeah.
But have you been playing Halo? I know that they did some stuff with didn't they just release Halo or something on
No, they did like a flight, like a test flight for Halo 3 when that's supposed to come on PC, which is the first time that'll be on PC like ever. So that's kind of a huge deal, but I really only touched it a little bit. I'm working on actually a 23 to 25 minute video about game design and FPS, and I've been capturing a lot of footage for that in the meantime, but aside from that, I haven't really been playing much of anything.
Interesting. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I found just a little bit of time to play the last week, not much. Still working on Mass Effect, the original. The more I play it, the more I feel like it's fun. You know, fun. I don't think it holds up the way it used to. I used to really, really love it, but I'm getting through that. And then I downloaded Chess Ultra on PS4. This game came out back in 2017. I actually missed it, so I was looking for something to play on Twitch with my Long Island Viper audience. And there's an old chess game on PS4, PS3, and Vita that I was going to download that I had already owned. And when I was just looking for it, this game Chess Ultra came up, which is from the same publisher, Ripstone. But it's a much more dynamic game. You can play people live as opposed to correspondence chess and all of that. It's otherwise just a normal chess game. But it's very functional if people are looking forward to or looking for something to play. I love chess, so I love playing the game.
Yeah.
Chess Ultra might be something worth looking at for you.
If chess is so good, then how come there's no Chess 2?
I know, that's a good point. I think there might have been there's chess variants in real life, but I feel like there might have been a video game called Chess 2 at some point, like as a joke.
Do you remember when there were like 400 sequels to the original Tetris because Tetris didn't really have a technical owner? So it was just like people would there was this one game I remember it was called like The Next Tetris. I can't remember what platform it was on. It was like really old though.
Yeah, they never really, with the exception of Tetris Ultimate, that's the good one, right?
I don't know. Tetris is always good, so
that might not be the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, it is always good. I mean, you don't really need to do much to it. It's just a timeless game.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that's what we're playing. Brian Borlaug wrote into us. He says, "Hey, CNC, when's the last time you completely regretted a game purchase? I recently bought the new Sakura Wars on PS4 and I wanted to try the series for so long and it had never come over. However, I didn't do my due diligence and watched some videos and bought it on sale, assuming it was a turn-based strategy RPG with some dating sim stuff like I'd seen in the old games. What I got was how do you say that? Waifu? Right?
Yeah, waifu, I think.
I've never actually said that out loud. So waifu dating sim adventure game with minimal Musou gameplay. I was bummed, but I skipped all the story just to beat the game to feel slightly less let down. As a 34-year-old father of two, I just can't pretend to be excited about courting some big titty anime girls. It was awful. Thanks for all you guys do, and congrats on the new house, Colin, and the move. Chris, thank you. Chris, have you regretted a purchase recently, a video game purchase?
I don't know if I've regretted a game purchase necessarily. I typically only buy something if I have a pretty good feeling that I'm going to like it, or if I'm genuinely curious. And if I end up kind of not liking it, I still kind of don't regret it because it means that I've played something new. And I kind of also, it just gives me an opportunity to just kind of like capture footage from it and gives me reasons to work with it in future videos if I want to use it for whatever reason. So I don't really regret purchases. I feel a level of shame in how many times I've purchased Skyrim, but I don't know if that counts as like a regret necessarily. You know, it's more like it's more just shame.
Yeah,
you
shame.
know?
Yeah, I understand. Do you think that there'll be like a Guinness Book of World Record holder for the person who bought Skyrim the most? like how many different ways can you buy Skyrim? You know,
what a waste of a record. Like the
awesome.
thought of somebody breaking that and being like proud of it and like having it engraved on their tombstone when they inevitably die from being fused to a chair for too long.
I can't believe that game's almost 10 years old. Makes me feel
yeah. Oh wow,
really
yeah, it
old.
is. That's really gross. But
yeah,
I own it
8
on
years
like
and change.
I own it on everything. I have it on PS3, 360, Switch. I have it on PS4. I have it on PC. Then I have the ultimate editions. It's just a mess. It's just a waste.
Did you get the VR one? There's Skyrim VR, right?
Oh, I don't. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I've restrained myself at least on that front.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get there eventually.
Maybe.
Games I've regretted buying. So I talk shit about the game all the time. I don't really regret it because I wanted to try it, but that game Generation Zero was just atrocious. And by the way, they're still updating it. I saw today that there's like going to be an update for the game. I'm like, really? You gonna like make it fun? That would be a good update. More recently, I bought Langrisser 1 and 2, which is these old strategy role-playing games. I actually didn't hate it, but it just wasn't exactly what I was looking for, and it was $60, so I was kind of like,
Yeah.
kind of regret buying this. But there's another game that I regretted buying when it came out, and it's called The Forest, which we brought up last week, and we actually had someone write into us about this. We actually got a lot of letters in about The Forest because I asked you guys to explain it to me. Gavin Alexander is the person I chose. He said, hello, Colin Estra and Christoph. I don't know what that means. On the last episode of Sacred Symbols, you mentioned that you wanted someone to write in about The Forest. I will have you know that my mom and I are veterans of The Forest. We often play online co-op games together, and we found The Forest on a PlayStation Store sale for cheap. That's probably why it's always selling so well. We were quite surprised at just how good the co-op experience was. The game is a blast to play alone or with up to 8 players. While clunky, the game is one of the most chilling experiences I've ever had in a game. Exploring caves with only melee weapons and a flashlight while trying to survive cannibal onslaughts was terrifying, and the survival loop with the gameplay kept us coming back for more just to find out if we could survive until the end of the game. The story is minor and the gameplay is simple, but I will always remember my experience with this game for these reasons. As to why it's selling so well, I believe it's because of the great sales that the store has been having for a year or so. I believe you can buy the game for $10 or cheaper on the sales the store has been having, which is totally worth it. In fact, I believe that a CLS side quest is in order when you and Chris play the game cooperatively. It sure would be a sight to behold. Thank you for all that you do, and remember, play has no limits. Gavin, if we played The Forest together, I'd leave Chris for dead in that forest. Just want to be honest with you about that.
Yeah, I could see that.
But we got a lot of people writing in about The Forest, so I knew people had something to say about this game. It's just too much of a coincidence that it was just on the charts all the time. Because $10, I think, is only $10 more than it was when it came out. So it's not like it's that cheap or that much cheaper. I was going to say that much more cheap, but that's not the way we speak English. All right, Gavin, thank you for writing in. And thank you also, Brian, for your letter there. All right, Chris, let's get into the news. Now, the first thing that we want, the reason we waited to record actually so late is because we wanted to talk about the EA live stream, EA live stream, where they were going to talk about some stuff. So I didn't write any of this out. I just wrote notes here, and I thought we would just be able to talk about whatever we wanted.
Yeah.
About what they announced. So they started with Apex Legends, new content, Lost Treasures, and the big thing here is that it's going to be crossplay, and it's coming to Switch and Steam. This was a pattern on EA's part during the stream, although we are not a Steam or Switch podcast, so we won't go too deep into that. You have anything to say about Apex Legends, what they showed? Any excitement?
No. I mean, I like Apex Legends from a gameplay perspective, but I'm not following any of this. Like, I don't give a shit about the seasons. I'll pop in once, every couple months, play like a game or two, and then forget about it for another several months. This honestly, like, seeing this trailer, like, confused the shit out of me, because I was like, I swear to God, this wasn't the tone of Apex when it was first a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll talk. I want to talk more about Apex in a little while with one other game, because it's just looking more and more generic to me, and I wonder if that's actually translating to the player base, because they said 70 million people are playing the game, or have played it, so I don't think it's really affecting their bottom line. But
yeah,
it's just these games all look the same to me at this point.
Yeah, we're really getting into that territory.
They next showed The Sims 4. That's available on PS4. I wrote here in our notes Woke Fest, because that's what it was. I get it with what's going on in the world right now, but I don't know why they decided to show this game. There was really nothing for them to say about it, other than that it's coming to Steam.
Yeah, that was pretty much the only announcement. And I think Titanfall 2, A Way Out, and Dead Space 3, which is a really weird collection of things to talk. I guess A Way Out makes the most sense, but like, what? Suddenly you care about Titanfall 2?
Yeah, and Dead Space 3 is weird too, because Dead Space 3 is actually the only Dead Space game available on PS Now as well. So I don't know what it is about that game that they want to keep alive, but they don't make the other ones available. So there's that. Sims 4, if you care about that. They'll have more announcements about that later. They talked about Command & Conquer Remaster. That's not even on PS4, or PS5, so we don't have to get into that. Then they talked about the EA Originals. This was kind of interesting. So Hazelight, the studio that did Brothers, A Way Out, led by a guy named Joseph Fares, who people probably know as the guy who said fuck the Oscars at the Game Awards. They announced their game coming, their new EA original game, which is called It Takes Two. It's a co-op game just like A Way Out, but it's more cartoonish, and it's kind of come out in 2021. You have anything to say about this game? A Way Out is actually like a really clever game, but I'm not really into co-op games, so
yeah,
it's not that tantalizing to me.
It's a different niche for sure. I like that guy, like Joseph Fares.
Yeah,
he's just like weirdly, he's a strange individual, and I like him. And I think I didn't play A Way Out, but I really liked Brothers a lot. So I'm interested in seeing whatever the hell this is. They didn't really show much, but he has like a really contagious confidence that kind of gets you excited, even if you're not really sure what the hell you're excited about.
Yeah, it's a lot of pomposity, which is interesting, but I guess he earned it. I mean, you can swing that big EA Originals dick around if you want, Joseph. It's all good. Zoink Games came back. They made the game Fe. I think that's how you say it, F-E. And they're gonna they showed their new game called Lost in Random, which comes out in 2021. I actually saw that you tweeted about this, so this is a game that has caught your attention.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking a lot about, there are some other games that we'll get into in the event here, but there's a lot of games that I've noticed that are starting to really look nearly identical. And the pattern is just kind of like, hey, let's take this kind of Pixar aesthetic and just add guns to it. It's like hey, it's very like Chinese mobile game art style, and it just seems to be like really pervasive. And it was nice to see, you know, even if it's not like a multiplayer game like all these other games, it's nice to see a game that's like cartoonish and like really stylized, but doesn't look like every other godforsaken game that I've seen. It has like a nice like kind of Tim Burton kind of scary stories to tell in the dark kind of art style, and it's really cool looking. I don't really know what the game is. Like that seems to be like a common thing lately. In general, we seem to be seeing a lot of trailers and not a lot of gameplay of these things, but it looks neat enough from an art design perspective, and that's like a huge thing for me. So it definitely did catch my attention in a positive way.
Yeah, it looks pretty, and we'll see. So both Hazelight and Zoink Games have worked with EA Originals in the past. The final EA original they showed was from a new studio called Final Strike Games. This is their first game. It's called Rocket Arena. It's a 3 versus 3 hero shooter with 10 heroes at launch. Comes out July 14th. It'll be crossplay between applicable platforms, and there will be seasons, just like these other games, on July 28th. Now, I don't know, man. This game, and again, I say this as an outsider to the whole hero shooter thing. I get it, but this looks so generic that this looks like Apex Legends, which is another EA game. I just don't understand what the point of this is in EA's portfolio of games. I'm sure it was probably cheap for them to make. Maybe they're just trying to experiment, but this stuff's starting to look so generic. I don't know where this cartoony, did it start with Fortnite or something? Or Overwatch?
This is what I was talking about. You know, this is the game that I saw, and I was like, this looks exactly like Fortnite to me. Like almost precisely. Like the style of it, the textures, the lighting, everything. It just looks like Fortnite. Everything looks like a Chinese mobile game. It's like it's insane. And like I don't know, like I appreciate the idea that like, you know, oh hey, they say arena in it to kind of trick you into thinking like, oh, there's like it's an arena shooter, but it's not an arena shooter. Like there's every character, it's a hero shooter in an arena. Like those are two very different things. And I don't know, this could be good. This could be fun. I don't know. I haven't played it, but like I know from like a visual design perspective, which is like the first thing you're going to see from any game ever is its art style. It doesn't look like something that I need to experience. It doesn't look like something I'm all that excited to see. So even if the game is good, you know, chances are it's probably not even going to draw me in to check it out. And this is why art design is like really, really important, and why art style is so important, is because it is quite literally everybody's first impression of your game. And when my first impression is, oh, Fortnite, I don't know, man. Like, it doesn't even look like a game that I would hate. And I still feel like,
Yeah, it's disappointing because I'm not a fan of these games, these kinds of games. I'm not going to play them anyway, but I'm like, isn't this an opportunity now to differentiate yourself a little bit from everyone else instead of just doing, this looks so Me Too. It looks like the same artists made these games.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where I long for gray. You know what I mean? Like, I remember back in the day, Gears of War got a lot of shit for like being like really gray and like really bleak looking, but and back then like colorful kind of games were kind of the unique thing. It was like because it stood out because so many games were gray. And now it's kind of the opposite, where so many games are these like, you know, knockoff Pixar looking things that like when you get something like The Medium, you know, it looks a lot more appealing and it looks a lot more stand out, despite the fact that it just looks realistic. Or like Control, I remember being striking too, because it was just like, oh, what is this? And it stood out because it looked real. It's so weird. We've just done a complete flip-flop on just the styles that have been so oversaturated. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And it's the problem that we talked about a lot, and we've talked about in the past on the show, and I've talked about for years, is that because game making is so latent, because it takes so long to make a game, that this is what happens when you don't try to do something original. And I'm not trying to say that Twin Breaker, our game, is like anything amazing, because it's a fun game and I'm really proud of it. But I wanted to do a Brick Breaker because no one does Brick Breakers. You know, it's not to say that the game's going to sell 1 million copies, but at least you can't compare it to anything else. In fact, there are more than 4,000 games on a PS4, and there are only 4 Brick Breakers, including ours. So that's like a cool thing to differentiate yourself from what others are doing in any way. And when you're in a Me Too kind of situation where games are expensive, I don't mean Me Too with like the sexual allegations. I mean a Me Too, just to be clear. I mean, like, you're in a Me Too industry where you want to follow the leader, and then you end up with shit like this. And I mean, this game's going to fail. I'm just telling you, it's going to fail. No one's going to care about this game. And I don't mean to be any disrespect to the guys that made it. I don't want to be mean, but they took their money. I mean, it's good for them, but I don't know what EA is thinking, especially because it just distracts from what they already do. Like, Apex Legends already exists. If you have a persistent game, you'd think you would want to focus on that as much as possible. But
yeah, it's weird that they're making it a persistent game, because it probably would have done fine as just kind of like this standalone kind of thing that you could just kind of reliably play. It's getting to the point where it's like, look, man, if I'm playing a game with seasons in it, it's the only game I'm going to be playing. You know, or it's the only game of that type that I'm going to be playing. I'm not going to be like keeping up with every single season of every single, like, you know, shared world, like persistent world kind of open world RPG hybrid shooter thing. Like, I'm not going to be doing that. I have room in my life for exactly one of those. And all of the stuff that comes out later on, it's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know if this is really sustainable in any real way.
It's definitely not. So we'll see how it all crumbles. But it's definitely not sustainable. There's just no way it is. But the next game they showed is a game that I think looks awesome. And they did announce this game a few days ago with a pre-rendered trailer, but they showed gameplay now. Star Wars Squadrons. It is a 5v5 multiplayer dogfighting game in the Star Wars universe. It also has single player functionality. Comes out October 2nd. Takes place after Return of the Jedi. This game will support, just like a lot of these other EA games, will support cross-play across all applicable platforms, and it will be playable front to back and online in PSVR. EA Motive is the developer. So the guys that worked on Battlefront 2's campaign. There will be 8 ships, 4 per faction, so you play as the Republic and the Imperials. And there are a couple of multiplayer modes to start. And the single player mode is interesting because you play as both a TIE fighter pilot and an X-Wing pilot, it seems like, or a Rebel and an Imperial fighter pilots as their stories kind of intersect. So I think this game looks super cool. I'm a huge fan of Rogue Squadron back in the day. I was also kind of into X-Wing, like X-Wing versus TIE fighter and all those kinds of games on PC in my younger years. It's been a long time since we've gotten a game like this, and I feel like this is the exact kind of Star Wars game we need, which is a AAA, single-player, multiplayer, high polish, affordable, because I think it's only going to be $39.99. And it's something that's a little different than everything else we've gotten so far. It really focuses on ship-to-ship combat, from the smallest fighter to the largest capital ship. So what do you think about this game, Star Wars Squadrons?
Yeah, I'm all about it. I really like this a lot. I'm excited about it specifically for the VR functionality, because this is kind of, I feel like, what VR is for as far as like games go. Like, this is really kind of like the perfect. It reminds me of what's that Steel Battalion? It was the Xbox game with the big ass.
Oh, the controllers. Yeah.
Was it Steel?
Like when you're in the cockpit.
What the hell was it? Steel Battalion?
Yeah, Steel Battalion, a Capcom game, I think.
Yeah,
it was the one where you had to have the special controller for it.
Yeah, it just feels like games like mech games and like starship games and like cockpit games like that, like really function really well when you have like a big panel of shit to like kind of immerse yourself with. And I think VR is like the perfect pairing for this. I also like really liked Star Wars Jedi Starfighter back in the day. That was an Xbox PS and PS2 game, I believe, from my recollection. So I'm all about this. This is actually the main thing that I'm really excited about from this presentation.
Yeah, it looks awesome. I mean, I don't know that I'll play it online. It reminds me a little bit of Eve Valkyrie, which is another game I really like in VR. It was actually, Eve Valkyrie is actually the game that sold me on VR when I played it for the first time, that it could actually work. Chris brought up Steel Battalion, which if you guys are not familiar with this game, you really should look it up. The gameplay is not even important. What you should look up is the controller, because you basically bought the game, but it came with a controller that I think has like something like 50 buttons on it. It's like 2 joysticks and these knobs and and pedals and stuff. It's really fucking cool. But it's like this we had one at IGN, so I used to just love pressing the buttons and like playing around with it like I was a child, playing with the cash register basically. But yeah, Steel Battalion is this kind of long forgotten Capcom game that was an Xbox exclusive that came out in 2002, and you had to buy this gigantic controller. I mean, you had to have space to even play this thing. And it is interesting to hear that name rung through the ages after going so long without hearing it. But yeah, so keep an eye out for Star Wars Squadrons. Again, that's October 2nd. And so that's got a date. They showed Madden NFL 21 and FIFA 21. They had a little bit with Lamar Jackson, who's the cover athlete from the Baltimore Ravens on Madden NFL 21. He was doing a little thing through his phone. So that was cool to see. Nothing much to say there. And then, before I get any further, actually, Chris, I do want to go back. Mark Zebro Jr. wrote into us and said, "Hello, Colin and Chris. It's been a long time since we've had a straightforward Star Wars flight game in the vein of Rogue Squadron or Starfighter games. Now with the recent announcement of Star Wars Squadrons, I'm over the moon." I wonder what moon he means. I wonder if he means the moon of Endor. "The starship battles were one of my favorite things about Star Wars since I was but a youngling. I'm skeptical about the single-player mode since it's the same writing team from Battlefront 2, but what's intriguing is getting to play the whole game in the first-person mode with PSVR. It was only a matter of time a game like this would release since the Battlefront 1 VR DLC from years ago. What do you guys think? Do you think you see yourselves picking up this new game come October? And will you be wanting to experience Squadrons to its fullest in VR? Love to know your thoughts. Thank you and have a great day." So, Chris, you talked about this a little bit already. I am loath to make a proclamation because I've made so many VR-related proclamations, yet the last game I played in PSVR was Moss, like 2 years ago. So I'm not going to get too crazy about it, but I'd like to think that I will play this game in PSVR. That's as much dedication as I'm going to put into it right now. I'd like to think that I will play this game in PSVR.
It's the main draw for me, for sure. Like I like, cockpit games and all that, like flight sims and all that. It's like they're fun and whatever, but like it's not going to drive me to like picking it up. But the VR functionality is something that I think is genuinely cool. It's like half of the reason why people go to arcades still is just to get in those like big things that just sort of feel like you're like actually in the thing and flying something. Or like, I remember what was it, the pod racers from back in the day in the arcades where you'd get on it and you would actually like move it around. It's just like these kinds of games just lend themselves really well to that kind of like immersion factor, and I think VR is just going to make it even better, and I'm all about it. It's like the main way that I'm planning to play it. In fact, I actually don't even really want to experience it on a controller at all.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, you'll need PlayStation Move, I think, for it.
Yeah.
So there'll be that or whatever functionality you have on your other VR units. All right, just a couple more things to get through from this EA event. They showed next-gen teases from 4 EA-owned studios. So Criterion, BioWare, DICE, and Motive. So Motive's working on another game that's not Star Wars Squadrons. Criterion, obviously, is kind of jumping back into the Need for Speed franchise with Ghost games kind of going away. BioWare is working on Dragon Age and maybe something else, and DICE is obviously always working on Battlefront and then probably Battlefield and engine level stuff. Did you see anything here from these guys that were worthy of the time shown? I feel like this just is going to create more speculation about what these teams are doing, which I think is so unnecessary, especially with Motive, because why would you tease what Motive's doing when you just showed Motive's first game? They haven't even gotten a chance to do their own game yet, and then you're like already distracting people from it. I just get annoyed when I see this stuff sometimes where I'm like, did anyone think about this?
Yeah.
At all? It's not a big deal, but it's like, I don't know. It just seemed wasteful.
It reminded me of back when they showed Andromeda for the first time and then were silent for years. Do you remember that? When they showed like, oh, hey, the next Mass Effect game is going to be bigger and better. And it's like, and they just showed like a bunch of like, hey, look, it's a sorry face, and like rocks. It's like, right. Okay, like cool, but like we're still like a year and a half, 2 years away from this. And this isn't really much of anything. It kind of reminded me of that, where it's like, oh wow, Dragon Age exists. We've known that for a while, and you showed us a skyline, like a magical thing that's pulsating, and a rock. Like I don't know what to make of any of this. Like I'm almost less interested.
Yeah, I just get annoyed with vagueness. I don't like it. Yeah. I think there's too much vagueness in the video game industry. And it just seemed like they needed to fill time. See, I would rather have like a shorter and tighter show that didn't waste time. And it would have made EA's show is pretty weak, I think, overall. But there was a couple of things worth noting in here that I think would have been the walkaway. So I don't think you needed to do this. And if you needed to do it, it should have been in the beginning when they were going on and on about all the stuff going on in the world right now. It's like maybe you want to go into this first and then show us the actual game. So it's really just a trifle. It's not really a big deal. But
yeah.
Nonetheless, I was really annoyed for the Motive thing, though, because I'm like, come on, man. You just showed a Motive game. Give them room to breathe, for God's sake. And then the big close, I didn't anticipate this. I thought they were going to close with Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Mass Effect Trilogy, because that was rumored. But apparently that's still happening, but they didn't announce it for whatever reason. But they closed instead with Skate 4. This game has been requested so much that it's become a meme. Skate 3 came out 10 years ago. So it's been a full decade since we saw a new skate game, and skating games are kind of going through a renaissance right now. Obviously, Tony Hawk's coming back, but then you have games like Session and others. So what did you think of this close? I thought it was kind of rushed. It reminded me a little bit of when
Titanfall?
EA and Respawn, with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, that's what it was, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what it reminded me a little bit of, when it was just like, what do we do? What do we do? Because they kept saying it's really early. It's really early. It seems like they haven't even really started pre-producing this thing yet. But
we think we've got a pretty decent skateboard model. But aside from that, it's still pretty early. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's cool that it exists. They didn't make a note of not saying Skate 4 though. They just said Skate. So I wonder.
That's true.
I wonder if it's just kind of like a. I mean, it's not like there's like a continuity you have to worry about. You could easily just do like a Skate reboot and
Skate lore.
Yeah, all the lore. Where did Jackson get that board? I don't know. Like I think it was definitely rushed. I feel like you could have at least like scrounged together some kind of vague teaser, Like even if it was like not really all that interesting, I feel like you could have gone about announcing it in a little bit more of an exciting way than just sort of showing two people talk about the fact that they're making this thing and they don't have anything to show and saying dude, I don't know.
I think this whole showcase really showed to me that EA is just boring. It's not a matter of the games that are boring. Like, I'm sure people are really going to be excited about the new Skate. Again, the Star Wars Squadrons game looks cool. It's just, they remind me a lot of Activision, where I'm like, I don't think you need to do this. You don't see Activision doing press conferences because I think they understand what they are, which is that they're like kind of this megalithic publisher. They have some really big games, a lot of shit that no one cares about, and then some interstitial stuff that people are going to buy anyway. I think this was just a reminder that EA is trying to hang on, even though they're just not the company that caters to this sort of event or this sort of experience. It just, every year their shit isn't that good. And I think it's unfair to them because I don't think it's really reflective of the quality of the games that they release overall. I just think that they're so annualized and so traditional and predictable that we just don't need something like this, especially for 45 or 50 minutes.
Yeah, I would agree. It did feel like it's definitely the weakest, like, of these shows that I've seen. I feel like there was less to be excited about. Skate 4 is cool. I'm happy that everybody, who was excited for that is getting it. Star Wars Squadrons is I think objectively probably like the most interesting thing. And then you have like little things like I like Kiosef Ferris, and I think Lost in Random looks cool as like a from an art design perspective, but like I don't know if I needed to sit through an hour just to get that information.
Yeah, me neither. It seems like a lot of forced stuff to make the runtime live stream worthy, because otherwise it would have been 15 or 20 minutes long. But again, I would argue like maybe that's better.
Yeah,
just like
rapid fire.
Square Enix did that I think a couple years ago at E3, where they had like a really tight stream of videos for all their games, and I was like, this is great. It didn't waste any time. There was no like people in it, talking and going on and on. It's like, just show us the games. Let's get to this. I don't need you to hype me up. I feel like I'm the anti-hype anyway with a lot of this stuff. So I eat all of your hype for breakfast. So save it. All right. So thank you, Electronic Arts, for a job well done. Okay. There's some other news to get into, although it's otherwise a pretty slow week, but there are a few other things worth discussing here. Number 2, Cyberpunk 2077, which has been in development for a long while and which had recently been delayed out of its summer release date to September 17th, has been delayed again. The game will now launch on PS4 on November 19th, which may very well be the same date PlayStation 5 launches. Developer CD Projekt announced the delay in a letter to the audience co-signed by the studio's co-founders. In the letter, the two mentioned the term, quote, "it's ready when it's done," end quote, noting that they want the game to be something, quote, "that will stay with you for years to come. In the end, we hope you understand why we did what we did," end quote. Sounds like he's talking about how he murdered someone or something.
Yeah. It sounds like a really ominous manifesto.
I know, it's like, Jesus Christ, dude. Leadership notes that the game is totally done from both content and gameplay perspectives, but that the game still has balance and bug issues, which isn't a surprise considering it's an ambitious open world game. The extra time they're buying themselves is strictly to make the gameplay better, more smoothly, and more reliably. Developer CD Projekt is best known for its 3 Witcher games based on the Polish fantasy novel series, and this game is being developed on their own engine by their own team, published under their own brand, and is inspired by the 1988 tabletop game simply called Cyberpunk. Chris, how do you feel about this unusual? I didn't see this unusual delay coming, to be honest with you.
I kind of just expect this game to be delayed at this point. I'm not really all that upset about it. I think they've been spending so long on this game, and I don't think it's going to be a bad game. It's not like a Duke Nukem Forever situation where I'm just like, oh no. It really is a game that I'm like, you know what? Delay it as many times as you need, because you've been working on it for a long time. This is a good studio. They're definitely going to make something great. You might as well take the time to ensure that the amount of time that you've put into this is reflected well in the work. And if that translates to 2 more months without playing the game and 2 more months of them kind of polishing things up and making the game as deserving of that development cycle as it needs to be, I think I'm all right with it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this either. I know a lot of people are disappointed in it. I think that it doesn't benefit the game because it's going to benefit the end result, but I don't think it benefits the game because it's going to come out right in the next gen hype now and it's going to get lost. I think a little bit more than it would have otherwise gotten lost because people are going to want to play native games on their new consoles. But this might be a little bit of a bone to people that are not going to be able to afford or find a PS4 at launch or an Xbox Series X. So they'll be able to play this and enjoy it. And I'll play it when it comes out. But this game has been in the ether for so long that I'm not really even that excited about it. I've said that in the past. It's going to be a game I play. I'm sure it's going to be great. And like you said, I think it's worth putting in the extra time since you've put in so much time to begin with. You might as well do it right.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you there. But I saw this and I'm like, I don't care. I was just a little bit more surprised by the delay because they've been talking about how the game is content complete. So they've been talking about that for a while. So the game must really be pretty busted for them to need more time already.
Yeah,
so
well, I would imagine.
I don't know.
I would imagine that it's probably going to be like a massive undertaking. I'm really kind of optimistic about this title. Honestly, I wouldn't even care if this was like delayed another year. Like it'd be fine by me. Especially even if it was content complete. I'm like, all right, yeah, you know what? Make this like a real magnum opus, and I'm all about it. But you know, this game's made almost a habit of being delayed at this point, so it didn't really bother me. And all I can say really is that I hope it's good. I hope it lives up to the hype, and I think to some extent I think it will.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I'm not worried about it at all. I'd be more worried about them releasing a Skyrim PS3 situation that they have to patch 7,000 times and they lose their goodwill and then they release the game 7,000 more times.
Yeah.
Just like Skyrim. Okay, number 3. Corporate juggernaut AT&T is looking to spin off its Warner Brothers gaming division, according to a report on business website CNBC.com. The article notes that AT&T is seeking around $4 billion in a prospective deal and that 3 major publishers, Electronic Arts, Activision Blizzard, and Take-Two Interactive, have all signaled that they're interested. The article does note that, quote, no deal is assured or imminent, end quote. However, to see how AT&T owns Warner Brothers games division, you'll need to fall far down the rabbit hole. AT&T owns Warner Media, which in turn owns Warner Brothers, which in turn owns Warner Home Video, which in turn owns Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment. That latter brand owns a handful of valuable studios, including its crown jewel DC developer Rocksteady Games, DC aligned, but it also owns LEGO Studio TT Games, Mortal Kombat, and Injustice developer NetherRealm Studios, longtime Lord of the Rings game dev Monolith Productions, and others. It also owns the Mortal Kombat and Fear IP and has publishing access, to DC's array of products, including Batman, and then there's Lego and more. AT&T's move may be in pursuit of lowering the company's overall debt load, which rests at $165 billion. This news emerges as word from WB Games' only career site indicates that the aforementioned studio NetherRealm is gearing up for both a new Mortal Kombat and Injustice game, indicating that behind-the-scenes work has gone uninterrupted through this purported sales period. The WB-aligned brand DC Comics is also gearing up to announce new games during the virtual event called DC Fandom, which occurs on August 22nd. Jonathan Thomas, this might be Jonathan Taylor Thomas from Home Improvement. He says, hello, Colin and Chris. With AT&T looking to unload the WB Games division, would this just be selling the owned studios like TT Games, Rocksteady, NetherRealm, Monolith, WB Games, Avalanche Software, Playdemic, etc.? This does not mean the IPs would go with the studios, correct? I'm talking about the Arkham series, Harry Potter, DC, Middle-earth, Lego, etc. Would WB then create separate deals and in theory can redistribute these IPs to other studios and publishers? Thanks. Very good question, JTT. Very good question indeed. So, first of all, Chris, before we get into any of the semantics about how this could possibly work, what do you think about this? This is a pretty big piece of news that is actually not that glamorous, so has gone underreported, but WB is a pretty big player and they own some pretty big studios and they own some pretty big IP, including Mortal Kombat and Injustice. So how do you feel about this? And how do you feel about the 3 players that are apparently involved in trying to buy them?
It'd be pretty wild if if any of those 3 get access to the amount of shit that WB has. That'd be like a huge win, I feel like, for any of them. I feel like if I were to make a guess, I feel like Activision would probably be the one that's probably the most in pursuit because I don't think they have really anything that fits in with that style of IP. Like Activision really doesn't have a fighting game at all. And they kind of like they could probably get some pretty good value out of that. But this would be a pretty huge thing if and when this happens.
Yeah, and again, if and when is the operative term. It would be cool for Activision to take it just because they might be able to revive Fear as well, which I really like.
Yeah.
I like the Fear series. I even liked Fear 3, which a lot of people didn't like very much.
It was okay. I liked Fear 1 and 2, though.
What was the studio that made Fear 3? They were in Chicago. Day 1 or something
Oh
like
my
that?
God. Damn it, I knew this.
Yeah. I don't think they exist anymore. They might, but to the point that is made by JTT here in his question, the presumption is that, so WB Interactive owns all of those studios that we mentioned, and they own Mortal Kombat and they own Injustice. But because of WB's affiliation with the film aspect of some of this stuff, that's how they get access to Batman. That's how they get access to Lego and all of that stuff. So it's unclear to me if, apart from contractual obligations that have already been signed for, if like the relationship with DC comes with it, if the relationship with others goes along with it, because he actually makes a really good point that they could unload all of their studios and then reassign the contracted stuff through DC and Lego and such to others, which would be very similar to what Marvel decided to do with the Star Wars stuff. Because remember that there used to be like endemic Marvel and Star Wars aligned studios, and they closed them all down and then just started giving the IP away. So that's how we got games like Spider-Man from Insomniac and the Star Wars games from EA and all of that. So it's actually not beyond the realm of possibility that they would do something like this. But I feel like the value in them, as good as Rocksteady is, as good as Monolith is, that's not $4 billion worth. Remember that the Insomniac sold to Sony for like, what was it, like 300 million. And I would argue Insomniac's more valuable than really any of those teams, except for maybe Rocksteady. So when you look at the number of studios, but then you also look at the money being asked, it must include the IP.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. Or at least access to the IP that they don't own. But we will see. Because I remember Harry Potter games, for instance, used to be published by EA. It wouldn't be that unusual for them to move these things around. But a studio like TT Games has been working on Lego pretty much its entire existence, so that would be weird to decouple them. Rocksteady's so known for its DC games, even though obviously it started with like Freedom Force and stuff like that. So we will find out. But Jonathan Taylor Thomas, thank you for writing in. Number 4. Earlier this year, Square Enix vaguely elaborated on the fact that following Kingdom Hearts 3's critical and commercial success in 2019, we'd be seeing a lot more of the series. So cue up a new Kingdom Hearts game for PlayStation 4. Though not one many of you may be all that interested in. The game in question is called Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory, and it's a rhythm game starring Kairi as the protagonist. I guess that's one of the characters. Rhythm-based spin-offs are nothing new, particularly for Japanese RPG franchises like Persona, and Kingdom Hearts certainly has plenty of spin-offs of its own. It's unclear when Melody of Memory will launch, but Square Enix notes that the game will come out by the end of 2020. I know you're looking forward to that one, Chris.
This really sends my soul spiraling.
Yeah.
Is really the best I can say.
Oh, well, I'll leave it there. Number 5, as it does each month, the NPD Group has revealed the best-selling games in the United States, both at retail and digitally, for the month of May 2020. Experiencing continued COVID-related issues that are keeping many Americans home, and even with a diving economy, American consumers spent nearly $1 billion on games, software, hardware, and peripherals for the month. Especially impressive since there were no new releases on any platform of any major consequence. By the way, that's more than twice as much as it was spent in May 2019, in case you're curious. The 5 best-selling games of the month across platforms were Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Grand Theft Auto 5, Animal Crossing New Horizons, NBA 2K20, and Mortal Kombat 11. It says Mortal Kombat in our notes here. Like all Nintendo games, Animal Crossing's numbers don't include digital, meaning it was almost certainly the month's best-selling game. Other notable entrants include Final Fantasy VII Remake at 8, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order at 10, Minecraft Dungeons at 15, and MLB The Show 20 at 17. Call of Duty Modern Warfare remains the best-selling game of both the calendar year so far as well as the last cumulative 12 months. Final Fantasy VII Remake is the 3rd best-selling game of the year across platforms, with MLB The Show 20 at 7 and Resident Evil 3 Remake at 8. If you just count PlayStation 4 games, these were the top 10 best-selling games of the month. Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Grand Theft Auto 5, Final Fantasy VII Remake, NBA 2K20, Mortal Kombat 11, Minecraft, MLB The Show 20, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Madden NFL 20, and Red Dead Redemption 2. NPD sales data comes on the back of publisher/developer announcements in regard to individual games. For starters, Warhorse Studios revealed that its hardcore open-world RPG Kingdom Come Deliverance has surpassed 3 million units sold.
Wow.
While fighting game Dragon Ball FighterZ from Bandai Namco has surpassed 5 million units sold. So not too shabby. Warhorse killing it.
Yeah, that's pretty insane.
I think Deep Silver bought them, right? So they've cashed out, but I'm sure we'll get another Kingdom Come game.
Mm-hmm.
Kingdom Come Acceptance is what it's going to be called. It's going to be a game about togetherness.
Yeah. It's a DHL game where you deliver packages.
I was always confused by DHL. Because they seem like, because, you know, we have FedEx and UPS, but DHL is like, they're like the international shippers, right?
I didn't know about DHL before this year, or like before Death Stranding came out, because everybody was like, look at this DHL game. And I was like, what? Like, what the hell is that? Yeah, I think it's like an international kind of, but you never see like ads for them. Like, I don't think I've ever seen DHL out in the wild.
Yeah, I've seen it like in cities, but that's about it. They always seem like really sophisticated, like well above my comprehension. I know, like, there's no DHL store that you walk into and ship things like you do with the FedEx. I'm not that bougie, so I'm not going to go find the DHL store. Number 6, website Push Square has done some interesting reporting around a PlayStation 5 game called Lo-Fi, which is set to come to PlayStation VR. The thing is, this game won't be coming to PS4, meaning that it could be the first announced PSVR game that only works with either PlayStation 5 only, using PSVR's backwards compatibility function, or the yet announced PSVR 2 with PS5. Either way, Canadian developer Iris VR is creating the game and crowdfunded it on Kickstarter. As Push Square points out, the Kickstarter page points to, quote, next-gen PSVR, in quotes. In their words, and a brief statement given to Push Square said, in part, quote, I can't really comment other than saying yes, we will be on PS5, and no, we don't intend to release on PS4, end quote. This is an interesting one I've been trying to read about.
Yeah.
It seems that Iris VR is announcing a PSVR 2 game. But it's important to note that PSVR is backwards compatible. We just don't know if PSVR backwards compatibility will support only PS5 games. Does that make sense? We haven't heard. In other words, we haven't heard anything about that.
This is going to be a really confusing kind of thing to deal with, because you have intergenerational hardware within intergenerational hardware. So you're going to have to be like, okay, well, this piece of hardware is backwards compatible, but like not every game on the machine is. So like, okay, but then there's a new machine that has yet to be announced, but then like, what would that really mean? Like, why put out something on PlayStation 5 only if it can do what can be done on PlayStation 4? And if it can't be done on PlayStation 4, why not wait for the proper, you know what I mean? It's going to be like a weird situation with this machine and this peripheral.
It's hardware inception, like, for sure.
Yeah, basically.
You're right. Like, all right, so PSVR, because we got a letter from Mark Hutton that says, hey, Cthulhu, Chris, and Caruncle Colin. What's Caruncle?
Caruncle?
I know Caruncle. I know Carbuncle from Final Fantasy VI. Let me look this up. A Caruncle is a waddle of a bird, such as a turkey.
Oh, I think...
how do you say it here? Caruncle.
Yeah, Caruncle. Yeah, it's such a gross fucking word. I remember saying this word over and over again to my roommate like 3 years ago, because I learned it and I thought it sounded disgusting, and I must have completely forgot it.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's awesome.
He says, I've just joined Patreon, Mark. Thank you so much. And am loving the extra content. Thanks for all that you do. You're welcome. With the reveal of so many peripherals, do you think PS5 will be backwards compatible with PSVR and PS Move? Thanks for all that you do. So, Mark, we already know, thank you for your question. We already know that PSVR is backwards compatible, and therefore PS Move will also be backwards compatible, which is insane. You plug in the PSVR, or you plug in PS Move rather, with USB mini cables. That's how old those things are. And they'll work with PS5. That was right? USB mini, and then USB micro was the smaller one, right?
I believe so. Like the mini is like the small but fat one, I think, right?
Right. That's the one that you plug the PS3 controller in with.
Yeah, and the micro is like the flat, like skinny ones. Right.
Okay, so I got that right in my head, which is unusual. So we already know PSVR is backwards compatible with PS5, and PS Move will therefore be backwards compatible as well. But this thing with Iris VR is just strange, because I agree with you. If your game is running on PS5 only, PSVR can handle it, I guess.
Yeah.
But if you're running it on PSVR on PS5, then it's not available on PS4, then why not make it available for PSVR 2? I think this is a PSVR 2 game. Yeah. I think that it has to be. But I just don't know. This is a kickstarted game. This is some random game. Why would they be allowed to say anything about it? Vaguely.
Yeah. Maybe they're just talking shit.
They could, you know what I mean? They could be. The game raised $120,000 or something, so it's not like it's like going nuts over there on Kickstarter, but I guess we'll find out. I just thought it was interesting because other than that Bloomberg passing article from months ago, we haven't heard anything about PSVR 2. And Jim Ryan, in interviews after the PlayStation event, has declined outright to talk about it at all. So they're aware of mixing messages, I think. So we will have to wait for more information, I suppose. Number 7, there are a few other new VR games and updates coming to PSVR later this year, according to a series of posts on the PlayStation blog. These games are in addition to the second-party exclusive PSVR game Iron Man coming out in early July, and of course in addition to their near-weekly new releases on the headset of the smaller variety. For starters, Vertigo Games, the developer of one of PSVR's most popular games, the zombie hunting FPS Arizona Sunshine, is bringing a new game to PSVR, at least as its publisher. It's called Traffic Jams, and they describe it as a tongue-in-cheek VR game all about directing traffic badly. Created by Little Chicken Game Studio, a team primarily focused on other games, art, and art direction, though it has created its own smaller games. So, in other words, Vertigo is publishing this game. It looks really funny. People can go check it out. So there's that. Additionally, rhythm-centric FPS VR game Pistol Whip is coming to PSVR. Cloudhead Games is a VR-focused studio with a lot of experience in the space. Pistol Whip VR is coming to PSVR on July 28th. Traffic Jams is coming a little later at some point in September. Finally, the PlayStation blog also revealed that Alchemy Labs' Vacation Simulator is getting a piece of DLC called Back to Job, where you get to work at the resort Vacation Simulator itself takes place in, which is fucking awesome. It'll be available to all owners of the game on PSVR free of charge. So a little bit of a meta DLC experience there.
I like that.
But you said fucking awesome. So you know Pistol Whip?
Yeah, have you seen footage of Pistol Whip at all?
I haven't.
Pistol Whip is really weird because it's like this, you're kind of on this treadmill kind of, and you're just kind of, or this conveyor belt, I guess would be a more accurate description. And you're just kind of wheeled through these kind of Beat Saber like environments, but instead of like slashing boxes in front of you to the rhythm of the music, you kind of just John Wick around and shoot people to the rhythm of like whatever song is playing. And it's like a really, it looks really, I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but it looks really kind of fun because it just like, any game that lets you kind of feel like John Wick in VR is like already kind of cool. So to combine that with like the rhythm gameplay of like Beat Saber seems like it could be a genuinely good marriage of styles. Also just rhythm games in general work really well in VR. Like Beat Saber is still, I think, if you don't count like Half-Life Alyx and like Boneworks and stuff like that, that's a little bit more high-end and physics-based. I think as far as like the best VR game you could play, like Beat Saber is just like pretty damn perfect.
Yeah, and people love it on PSVR, and it's still selling really well on PSVR, so I don't expect that to stop anytime soon. So a few new games to look forward to.
Yeah. On
PSVR. Number 8, there are unfortunately some more in-person event cancellations to make note of. Both PAX West in Washington State and PAX Australia have been canceled and will be replaced by something called PAX Online, which is a virtual event that will take place over 8 days from September 12th through 20th, completely free of charge. The show plans to have a carousel of game demos, reveals, and more. Maybe they'll invite us to that and cancel us at the last second too.
Yeah. You know, I will say, you know, they were fine, and then they canceled our panel, and now look.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
Fucking losers. No. Or am I? I'm really not kidding. They are fucking losers. The annual Star Wars celebration has also been canceled, and those with tickets have the option of getting a refund or transferring their tickets ahead to 2022 Star Wars celebration. And TwitchCon San Diego has also been canceled for later this year, though the streaming company is trying to figure out an alternative, perhaps a digital event of some sort. These digital events are getting a little old.
Yeah.
Be careful what you ask for, I guess. Yeah. All right, Chris. You have to give me a little bit of time here because number 9 is a wrap up, but this is a long wrap up because there have been a bunch of games announced. Now, some of these games we've talked about before, but we just said that they were coming. Now we have dates on them. Mm-hmm. A few of these might be repetitive, but I try to just be as comprehensive as possible. So let's get into this here real quick. The PlayStation blog reports that survival horror game Remothered Broken Porcelain is coming to PS4 on August 25th. That asymmetrical spy game Operation Tango is coming to PS4 at an unknown point in the future. That Vanillaware, I love Vanillaware, action game 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is coming to PS4 on September 8th. That action-based tower defense game Tribes of Midgard is coming to PlayStation 5 in 2021. And that third-person action game The Pathless is coming to both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 later this year, seemingly as a launch game for the latter. Website Gamatsu reports that rhythm game Mad Rat Dead is coming to PS4 on October 30th. That previously revealed racing game Dirt 5 is coming to PS4 on October 9th, with the PlayStation 5 iteration to follow. That Run and Gunner Ultra Core is coming to PS4 on June 23rd, and that a Vita iteration will be coming at an unknown date in the future. That action RPG, Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? Infinite Combat comes to PS4 on August 11th. I know Chris is looking forward to that one. That tactical RPG Other Side is coming to PS4 on July 28th. That RPG Blue Fire is coming to PS4 in early 2021. That adventure game Read Only Memories Neurodiver is coming to PS4 in early 2021. That stealth game Serial Cleaners is coming to PS4 at some point in 2021. That RPG Morbid The Seven Acolytes is coming to PS4 later in 2020. That roguelike game Rogue Lords is coming to PS4 at some point in 2021. That JRPG Chris Tales comes to PS4 on November 17th. That's a game all about Chris.
Yeah.
With a PS5 version to follow at a later date. That action game Goner 2 is coming to PS4 later in 2020. That card-based game Doors of Insanity is coming to PS4 at an unknown point in time. That Warhammer 40k Mechanicus, which we just talked about coming out, but I guess isn't, is coming to PS4 on July 17th.
Jesus Christ, that's so much.
And that strategy defense game Castle Storm 2 is coming to PS4 on July 31st. Website Push Square reports that Wipeout-like racing game Pacer is coming to PS4 this fall. That the announced then delayed PS4 port of the N64 game Star Wars Episode 1 Racer now has a release date on PS4 of June 23rd. That adventure game Dustborn is coming to PS5 at an unknown point in the future. That horror game In Sound Mind comes to PS4 at some point in 2021. And that twin stick shooter West of Dead is coming to PS4 in August later this year. Website IGN reports that the following games are coming to PS4, most with unknown dates. 3D action game Eternal Cylinder, music-based game No Straight Roads, Castlevania game, light game Vigil of the Longest Night, RPG Wolfstride, grand strategy game Star Renegades, sim game Calico, action game Almighty Kill Your Gods, action game Trash Sailors, adventure game Minute of Islands, action game Cyanide and Happiness Freakpocalypse, co-op game Pushy and Pulley in Blockland, stealth game El Hijo maybe it is, a Wild West Tale, farming game Summer in Mara, side scroller Edo no Yami, card game Cardicalism, card game Doors of Insanity, I think we already said that, adventure game A Juggler's Tale, card game Lake, RTS Colt Canyon, roguelike Slay the Spire, shoot 'em up Rigid Force Redux, and multiplayer game Swim Sanity. IGN also reports that Roller Coaster Tycoon like Planet Coaster is coming to PlayStation 5, likely a console launch. And finally, developer Remedy Games has confirmed that its cult hit third-person action shooter Control is coming to PlayStation 5 at an unknown point in time.
Hey.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ almighty. That's so much.
It's a lot of games. It's a lot of games. Too many games. Now, Chris, we usually read our new game releases here. So this is usually the drop. They got rid of the drop on PlayStation Blog. Then they just gave us names of games, and then we made them up. And the audience really liked what we made up for all these game names. Now, this week, we have nothing. There's just nothing.
Yeah.
So we can't read any of the new game releases. But we hear you loud and clear. You seem to like that we made up all of the games. Not the titles, but what the games were. So we'll continue to do that if and when they bring that option back for us. But Chris, finally, let's get into the listener mail. We always end our show, as tradition dictates, with six more questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience. Remember, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/CollinsLastStand to submit your inquiries. Neo JD wrote into us and said, I'm sure you guys will cover it, but I'm curious as to your thoughts on the Little Devil Inside devs changing a specific enemy design due to fan backlash. Is it the right call? Personally, I didn't even think anything of it until I read the article. Did you see this by chance?
I saw this question on the document and I looked into it, but I didn't hear about it beforehand.
All right, so when you looked into it, what do you think about what you read?
I don't know if I care that much. You know, there comes a point where it's like, I notice that this is a conversation that happens a lot where it's like, you know, there's this kind of drive to be like very politically correct and kind of change things. But there's also this drive to kind of complain when a developer makes a change to something when it seems like it's just a change that they're making to placate a section of their audience. And it's like, look, man, it's just capitalism, honestly. Like, if people have a problem with something and you can change it and it's not that big of a deal to you, you're probably just going to do that because it's easier than just dealing with the nonsense or bad publicity that you could get from it. I personally don't think that a developer should necessarily be bullied into changing anything about their game, but that doesn't really seem like what happened. It just sort of seems like they were like, yeah, maybe. And then they just changed it because they felt that it would it'd be fine. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. This doesn't seem like I've seen a lot of situations in throughout the years where like changes are made for like really arbitrary reasons, and you're like, what? Would anybody have even cared? But this one just doesn't really seem like one of those situations to me. It just sort of seems like a very blasé kind of story.
Yeah, I don't know about this, because this all seemed to have started. I was reading a Kotaku article that pointed to this guy named Balvin, Lord Balvin on Twitter, who's a Twitch streamer, I guess, who was saying that the enemy types. So he points to this one screenshot, and what you see to describe it is like a screenshot of these cartoonish looking enemies. They have like almost like an African looking mask, I guess, on. They have dreads.
It's like a Crash Bandicoot looking mask.
Yeah, exactly. Like a tiki, whatever you would call that, like a tiki style mask, I guess.
Yeah.
But on the Kotaku article, they write that the racist stereotypes of the enemy include big red lips, dreads, and white loincloth. And I look at it and I'm like, I don't know. Like that, I don't want to say I don't think. I'm positive that wasn't their intent.
Yeah.
But to your point, they're just reacting to, I guess, some people's negative connotation with the imagery, even though I don't think that was their intent. They said on their Facebook page, they put a post up, and they said in part, in an answer to a series of inquiries made in the last 24 hours regarding certain character design revealed in the PlayStation 5 reveal event showcase trailer, the LDI team wishes to make the following announcement. Racist stereotypes of any kind were absolutely not intended. We were not aware of the stereotypical connotations and wish to apologize to anyone who may have been offended by the character design. In addition, no one, not just limited to team members, has ever commented or hinted on the character designs. However, these characters have not been revealed publicly elsewhere prior to the event. The design intention was to create characters who are protectors or guardians of a particular mystic region in the world of Little Devil Inside. We were not producing character designs referencing any real African and or Afro-American human tribes. And they go on and on from there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's obvious. But I think, honestly, timing is really a big thing where it's like, if this were happening like a year ago, I don't think people would really give much of a shit. But I think, given everything currently, you read the room a little bit. I really don't think that they thought anything negative about what they were making. In fact, I think it's a little bit weird that the first thing you think of when you see that is black people. I think that's the weird thing to me, but I don't know. It's a weird time anyway. So it's like, if you're gonna make a change to something and you're reacting to something that you think could harm your game, that just strikes me as decent business. I don't think people should be bullied into changing things, but I mean, obviously everything gets complicated when you add in like all these different variables, like the climate and like just the general hysteria about what's happening now. I don't know if I'm really all that concerned about this particular instance.
Yeah, I'm with you, like, where I'm like, isn't it? Because if I saw this, now I'm not going to be able to unsee it.
Yeah, I didn't think that at all
right, exactly.
When I saw that. And I think it really does kind of like open a window into like how other people think.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's like one of those. Not to be reductive. It's almost facetious, but it's like, are you the real racist? Because I don't know because they brought out the point, the developer, where they showed this game obviously to Sony and to other stakeholders and stuff. No one noticed that.
Yeah. So
you have to be a special kind of chronically concerned, I think, to change things. But if that's what they want to do, that's what they got to do.
Yeah, and nobody that I know who is of that persuasion noticed or cared either. So I don't know. I guess it really is just like a couple people probably who are complaining about it. It actually, no doubt, is just a couple people. But like,
oh, definitely.
But yeah, I don't know. You do what you do as a company, and you react to certain things, and you're like, maybe this is, maybe this will make things smoother if we just do this.
Well, they don't want Kotaku hit pieces forever, so they gotta move on. Duncan Leishman wrote into us and said, "Hey, C Squared, long time. All right. Not really a question, but it would be good to hear your guys' take on Jeff Kanata's The Last of Us 2 review on Twitter that was taken out of context, overblown by influential people in the media, and he was attacked for it. I know you have both been subjected to this type of attack previously, so it would be good to hear your thoughts. It was good to see Druckmann, Barlog, and yourself, Colin, had his back. Did you see this, Chris, making the rounds?"
So I saw a lot of takes about The Last of Us on Twitter. I don't know if this is the one that I think this is. Is this the one where Where he's talking about Schindler's List?
Yeah, that's the one.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I did. Yeah, I saw.
All right. So how did that strike? So I should say off the top, Jeff Kanata is a personal friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm obviously going to take his side in this because I know him and I know what he's about. So it's not, he wasn't trying to be offensive or even silly. And I think that it was a weird thing to attack him for. But what did you make of it when you saw the Schindler's List reference?
So that's the main thing that people are kind of talking about, right? Is that he sort of compared it to Schindler's List. And that was...
Yeah, he does, but he really doesn't. What he says is that the game gives him the same dire feeling of like lack of enjoyment and high quality that Schindler's List gave him. That was basically what his point was, which I think is, I haven't played The Last of Us Part 2 yet, but that seems like a really valid thing to say. I don't think he's comparing the zombie apocalypse to the Holocaust.
Yeah,
and I think that really annoyed the shit.
Wait, hold on. Is that what people were like saying?
Well, people were saying, like Jason Schreier and others were just like basically being glib, like they always fucking are. And we're saying that like, well, you're invoking like a Holocaust movie with a video game about, like that was basically the gist of it.
But it's a movie.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also like, I understood what Jeff meant. Everyone who read that understood what Jeff meant.
Yeah, I thought the backlash was just how pretentious it sounded. Like, because I know a lot of people have like a huge hate boner for The Last of Us, and people are like, oh man, it's like this, it's the Schindler's List of video games. Oh, okay. Like that's what I thought the backlash was. I didn't realize that people thought it was like just a genuine, that they thought he was comparing it like 1-to-1. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, that was, and Neil Druckmann and Cory Barlog, who are obviously the creative directors of Naughty Dog and Sony Santa Monica, respectively, and me and others, came to Jeff's defense. And my take on it is this. This is an example of people knowing exactly what someone meant and looking for a reason to drag someone and score points on them anyway.
Yeah.
And Jeff Kanata, first of all, is like a really likable person. He's also like really liberal. So he certainly doesn't have a political target painted on him like I might, for instance. So I thought that it was interesting, but a lot of people were asking me about Jason specifically because this is Jason's fault that this all blew up in Jeff's face. No one believes his hype more than Jason Schreier believes his hype. And I don't know what happened with that dude over the last few years that made him from a really relatable and likable media figure to whatever he has become. But I'm willing to say that on the record. I think that Jason comes off as mean, as pompous, as arrogant all the time the last few years on a constant basis. And I think it was Cory Barlog that said himself, like, you just come off as mean.
Oh, really? He said that?
Yeah. Like, you just come off like a mean person.
I'm blocked by Jason Schreier, and I have been for years, so I don't know what he says.
I am blocked now, too. I'm officially blocked as well. I didn't even tweet at him. I tweeted at Jeff or Neil or someone, and then he blocked me. So I am so also weird. Now blocked by Jason.
Oh, my God. I really don't understand it. But I don't know. It seemed, if we're going back to what he was saying, I think everybody kind of understands what he was saying. I understood, like, with very minimal context, what he meant. In fact, I actually was talking to Bunty about this, where it's like, he was talking about, like, Bunty specifically was like, man, people are racking on Jeff for no reason. I was like, yeah, I think so too. But also, I would say that not necessarily that it's a 1-to-1 comparison as like, the Nazis to this video game about zombies and viruses. But I do think that there is a distinction in saying that's a positive thing, that it's that dire because Schindler's List is like a really bleak experience, but it's also like 2 hours. And I'm all for games kind of exploring all sorts of different themes, but there is something to be said that maybe like 25 to 30 hours of Schindler's List probably doesn't sound good, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like Schindler's List, the miniseries, basically.
Yeah, like I get it. I understand that, like, what he's talking about, and like how, like, there's quality, and then there's like the general like kind of bleak and direness of it. But at the same time, it's like maybe you do have to take into account like the medium that you're in and the amount of time that you're going to be spending in these worlds, and kind of think about that when you're exploring the tone of the thing that you're making. because the original Last of Us was bleak too, but it also had like moments of like levity. It had like moments of like, here's like a vaguely uplifting thing, or like here's a character that's kind of like vaguely silly and like likable and like kind of clashes with the protagonist in interesting ways. From what I've heard about The Last of Us 2, it seems like that's not really in it. I'm really excited to play tonight. Like I'm genuinely like interested in seeing like what it is, but the thought of a 30 to 25 to 30 hour complete no break Schindler's List experience sounds really awful.
Yeah, I hear. I mean, it sounds really interesting to me.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it will fare, but it worries me that comparison was made for the very reason that it might excite other people.
It's interesting though, Chris, because a lot of contention with people that were busting Jeff's balls, like with Jason and others, was like, you can't compare a movie about the Holocaust to a video game or whatever. My whole thing was like, why not?
Sure you can. I'll do it right now. Inglourious Bastards and The Saboteur.
Yeah.
There you go. That's actually like almost it's actually a very similar premise. Actually.
Yeah. Similar time period too.
Yeah. Same time period. I don't know what. You can compare anything to anything, first off. That's why the word compare exists. You know? Like, you might be stretching a little bit, but like, to say that you can't compare things, I always hate when I hear that. You can't compare. Fuck you.
Yeah,
that's what comparing is.
It's just confusing to me, because does that mean that like Schindler's List can't be compared to anything other than other Holocaust-related media? Because it just, I don't know. It just doesn't, because like you couldn't say like, because then you couldn't say like, oh, I watched X, Y, and Z with great cinematography, and man, the cinematography was also really great in Schindler's List. Like the only thing that matches up there is like you're talking about the nature in which the movie was shot. Is that not a valid comparison? So talking about the emotions that something brings up in you, saying like these are dire and dark and painful emotions, why are you immune to that because you're Schindler's List? I guess to me, I love Schindler's List. I think that movie's fucking awesome, but that was the biggest confusion to me. I'm like, what are you talking about? Why can't you compare The Last of Us Part 2 to Schindler's List? I've
always hated that. There's also this idea that like, for some reason, like, you know what Godwin's Law is, right? Where it's
remind me.
It's like, as an online discussion grows longer, the probability of a comparison involving the Nazis or Hitler kind of like,
yes.
Like
okay,
grows.
yes.
And it's like, that's used as like a logical fallacy almost, where it's like, oh, it's not valid to compare something to the Nazis or Hitler because it's such an extreme example. But the fact that it is such an extreme example is what makes it an effective comparison, because everybody understands it, and there's very little explaining that you need to do to like facilitate the argument if you're using that as a comparison. So like, I just hate all this weird shit about just that topic in general, where it's like, you can totally compare things to Schindler's List.
I agree. Go see Schindler's List though if you haven't. It's a very good movie.
It's not fun.
No, it's not fun.
It's not
and
very
apparently
fun.
Neither is The Last of Us Part 2, so I guess we're going to find out.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Peter Martin wrote into us and said, hey guys, greetings from the UK. I recently read an article stating that Kojima's canceled Silent Hills games plan to have an optional feature that would have messed with players in real life, such as receiving texts and emails, turning smart lights on and off, and affecting the PS4 dashboard and reading PS4 save data to creep you out. This reminds me of the Psycho Mantis fight from Metal Gear Solid. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think we'll see something similar in Kojima's rumored horror game? Would you have opted in for it? So the source of this, he actually sent me a link because I didn't hear about this. It's from Game Rant. And they say apparently Silent Hills would have allowed players to opt in to special features that would have continued haunting them even when they weren't playing the game. This would include things like players getting text messages, emails, and more from the game. Apparently this feature would have extended to smart lights, allowing the game to cause players' lights in their homes to flicker on and off at random. Needless to say, these real-life hauntings would have gone a long way in making Silent Hills one of the scariest games ever made. And there's more. Other features would have involved using the PlayStation 4 console itself for some scares. Exact details are unavailable, but Silent Hills would have supposedly altered the PS4 console dashboard in some way, and also used information from players' save files to freak them out. So that's just like Metal Gear Solid. What do you make of this? This sounds actually really cool.
Yeah, Kojima is probably the only person who could make me opt into something like that. Because if Activision made a game and they said like, hey man, we made a new Call of Duty game that makes your lights flash whenever a grenade goes off, I'd be like, fuck you, get out of here. Like you can actually just never speak to me again. But Kojima just has like, I feel like that Psycho Mantis fight was so creative and so interesting, and it's actually kind of disappointing that Kojima never really ran with that aspect of like out of game kind of like meta involvement with the player. And I kind of wanted more of that from him. So the idea that like, if this is true, that would have been sick. And I would totally have opted into it if just for the fact that it's a Kojima game. Man, like you said, like we don't know if this is true or not, but like that would be pretty amazing. And it would be in keeping with Kojima's like interest in just sort of entertainment beyond just what the game is.
Yeah, I love this idea for this particular game. And like you said, this particular creator, because the Psycho Mantis fight in 1998's Metal Gear Solid is still considered one of the most seminal and iconic boss fights in games ever.
Yeah.
And it was really simple what was being done in that game for the time. I mean, it looked like it was shutting your TV off and you had to like unplug your controller and like it manipulated your memory card and stuff. It was really cool. And I still remember figuring that out and doing that for the first time. And I actually didn't figure it out. I read about it because I didn't know what to do. And it's still talked about as if it happened yesterday. And so this is like the next logical iteration in the digital age for this. So I think that sounds really cool, but I think you made a good point that you don't want this in the hands of anyone. You want this in the hands of someone that can like deliberately do something with it. So I think it sounds awesome. I would have loved that.
It reminds me of like the, I can't remember which Arkham game it was. I think it was Asylum, where Scarecrow would like fuck with your game file, or like it like pretended to break the game, or like in Eternal Darkness where there was like a sanity meter that like really just messed with the UI and like it would lower your TV's volume and stuff. I love that stuff, especially with games that like really fit within that kind of theme. And I think Silent Hills would have been amazing if it integrated some stuff like that.
The Eternal Darkness connection is interesting too, because that was a Silicon Knights game, and they are the ones that remade Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
So they must have been influenced.
Oh, for sure.
For that decision, yeah. Very interesting. Although Eternal Darkness obviously came out before Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, but I mean, originally it must have been influenced by that. Because yeah, I love that kind of stuff, and you don't see it very often. And I think 9 out of 10 times it's annoying, or it would be annoying, or sounds annoying. But if you do it right, it would be really cool. So
yeah,
I love the idea, but I don't think we're ever going to see Silent Hills at this point. All right, I can't read you. Let's see. Greg Rygar wrote in. I hope that's your real name. Hey fellas, I'm looking for a bit of a history lesson to help answer my question. I'm also wondering at what point the PlayStation Plus membership will start to offer free PS5 games. Also, when can we expect free PS4 games to stop being offered? Is there a precedent set from the launch of the PS4? Thanks, and can't wait for the Colin and Chris Let's Play of Goodbye Volcano High. You're going to be waiting a long time for that one. We don't really know how this is going to work because PlayStation Plus launched during the PS3 era. It launched before Vita even came out. So all of the perks were being integrated slowly. When PS4 came out, we started getting free PS4 games. We still get free PS4 games. They stopped giving away PS3 games, I want to say probably 18 months ago. Explicitly, although some of the games were ported and then you had them available on PS3. So my assumption is we'll get PS4 games at least until 2022 or 2023, if not further. The bigger question, Chris, is when we will get PS5 games. I would assume we're going to get them immediately, don't you think?
I would, but then I would like wonder like what the hell would those be? Like maybe like more independent titles? Like what could I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around how they're going to do this.
Yeah, Resogun was a free PS Plus game right away. And I guess Sony opted to eat that cost. So maybe they could do a similar thing with Returnal, which is Housemarque's PS5 game, although I don't know if it's going to be available at launch. They just got to pick something out and make it available. Like something at launch. Just pay the devs whatever it's going to cost to put the game available for free. And it typically works out in the devs' favor. I think I've talked about this in the past. I won't say the name of the game or the studio because I heard it from someone else, but it is true that there was a somewhat prominent Xbox arcade game that Microsoft wanted to make a game with gold or whatever and offered them something like $1.3 million to do it. And they declined. And then they ended up making like $200,000 or something in the launch month. So typically taking the money up front, like it worked great for Rocket League too. Taking the money up front, I think, is the smart thing. So they'll find a taker. And one of the takers could be their own game, you know? So we'll see how it all works out. But I would expect those games to be given away free immediately in November. Josh Van Winkle, great-great-grandson of Rip Van Winkle, wrote in and said, Dear CNC, join Patreon to ask this. I was looking through some old games and realized Urban Chaos Riot Response was developed by Rocksteady, known for their terrific Batman games. Most people's introduction to Rocksteady was with Batman, while mine was Urban Chaos. By the way, I said Freedom Force before. Urban Chaos is what I was thinking of as their first game.
Freedom Force was Gearbox, right?
Yeah, it was. That was a Gearbox game, I believe. So my question is, has there been a developer that you were introduced to years before they got big? Thanks for making the week great. Does anything come to mind for you with this, Chris?
Yeah, Bungie. I played Marathon on like a friend's Mac. And like that was like the first experience that I had with Bungie, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And then like they had like the Myth games also on computer that were like just kind of like strategy fantasy games. And then like I'd been a loose fan of them for a while, and then like obviously they exploded by basically inventing the Xbox, and now they're doing Destiny. So it's kind of wild. It's always weird when that happens. It's like kind of like a fulfilling feeling where it's like, yeah, I remember. It's like listening to like an album from like some band and then they become big, except here you kind of like them, and in the music industry you hate them for being good and popular. I never understood that really, but it's fun.
We've all felt that way. Sure.
I don't know. I never really cared about that stuff.
Well, you're too cool. Let's see here. I wrote down for me, I couldn't think of a great example for this, but I wrote down Any Creates, the Japanese developer, because I was playing their Mega Man Zero stuff a long time ago, and then they made Mega Man 9 in 2008, and then Mega Man 10 in 2010. They got much bigger in years since then, with obviously Galgun, and they made Azure Striker, and they published the Blaster Master games and other stuff more recently. They were involved with Bloodstained. So they've become much bigger than they used to be. So that was the studio that came to mind for me. I'm a real big fan of theirs. I don't know that they're necessarily much bigger, but they have about 100 employees now, and they certainly didn't have 100 employees when they were making those Mega Man Zero games. So, oh, by the way, no, Urban Chaos. So Urban Chaos is Rocksteady. I said Freedom Force. That's Irrational.
Irrational. Freedom. Oh, right. Freedom Force was Irrational. Wait. No. Wait, that can't be right. Freedom Force was Irrational? I thought Irrational made SWAT.
No, Irrational. They made System Shock 2, and then they made Freedom Force. And that's basically it.
Really? What the fuck? They didn't make SWAT 4? I could have sworn they made SWAT 4.
They might. Let me see here.
Yeah, they did.
They made SWAT 4 as well, but they made that after Freedom Force. Yeah.
Oh, weird. That's wild. Damn,
so
I'm losing my mind. This information is just getting completely mixed up. It's like, why? I feel like I'm actually genuinely... It feels like Eternal Darkness where my sanity is just going like way the fuck down.
I hear you.
Good Lord.
We got to keep the energy up. We're almost done.
Almost.
Mark Byrne wrote into us, final question. All right, CNC, now that the PS5 event has come and gone, there wasn't a hint of anything Resistance. Do you think that Insomniac indeed didn't have a hidden agenda tweeting about the series? Do you still think they're planning on doing a new game for PS5? I can see it now, a sporadic adventure across America a la Resistance 3, fighting the Chimera and using cool guns. Using the PS5's power, I can see this being a total win. What say you? So Resistance was conspicuously absent just because they were... I didn't expect a new Resistance game, but I expected them to maybe announce the trilogy. I still think this is possible because I think it would be a PS4 game, and I think other than GTA 5, they don't really want to talk about PS4 in that event. So I think it's still possible, but a lot of people have pointed out that they've been tweeting a lot about a lot of games.
Yeah, that's true.
So what do you think? Do you think we'll see Resistance or what?
I mean, I hope so. It's pretty fucking annoying that they're just tweeting a lot about Resistance and a lot of games, but they just happen to just like not... It's frustrating to me just because I always thought Resistance was like kind of infinitely better than Killzone. And it just bothers me that was the one that they chose to just sort of like bring to the PlayStation 4 and just sort of like leave Resistance in the dirt to the point where you can't even play Resistance on the new machine, and probably not on the new machine either, because they haven't really said anything about it. I would hope to God that they just realize that they have something that's actually worth going back to, and I think a trilogy would be good. Like a collection kind of game would be a good way to do that. But I don't know if they really aren't planning on. If you're really not planning on putting out a Resistance trilogy or like doing anything with Resistance, don't tweet about it. Just don't do that.
Yeah, I agree. What's the point of doing that?
Yeah, because now you're just being a dick, kind of. Like it's like why?
Yeah, it creates a lot of obfuscation and I mean that's fun sometimes, but not with Insomniac. Not when we're curious about what they're doing, because they were getting a little crazy with Sunset Overdrive as well now. Sony owns the Sunset Overdrive IP now because they own Insomniac, but they don't own the publishing rights to the first game. So that would be another possible and tantalizing thing, would be for Sony to work out with Microsoft how they can get that game onto PS4 or PS5 and then maybe reignite that. I don't know, but those are the only two IP that they would have some control over that I would like to see come back. But Resistance doesn't need to be ported by Insomniac. Someone else can do it. So my hope is that that's what's happening. I don't think Insomniac needs to waste their time with that. If anything, they should waste their time making a fourth game, but they probably want to see how this does first.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I like Resistance more than Killzone. I'd like to see them both come back, but it seems like we might not see either of them. So
yeah.
We'll see what happens.
It's a damn shame.
It is. All right, Chris, that's all we have for this episode of Sacred Symbols, the PlayStation podcast. It's over.
It's over. That's it. We're done forever. Last episode, finale.
It is. It's the sudden series finale where we never come back.
Yeah, we're going to go to jail. And then I'm going to talk to you about how your button's a little bit too high up.
Oh, dear. And we always have to reference it somehow.
Yeah, always.
All right, Chris, we'll see you next week, and we'll see everyone out there next week for more of Sacred Symbols. Remember to support our show on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand, where you can get Sacred Symbols Plus and all the other goodies and interesting things waiting for you. We appreciate you. We love you. We thank you. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
All right. Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product of and a registered trademark of Collins Last Stand, LLC, and is recorded from Richmond, Virginia, and Burbank, California, USA. This show is conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun. You can find me on Twitter at NoTaxation and on Instagram at CLS Moriarty. Chris is on Twitter at Chris R. Gunn and on Instagram at Chris_Ray_Gun. Sacred Symbols is edited by Dustin Furman. To message the show online, please use Patreon's DM service. As you know, all of Collins Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/CollinsLastStand. The following names are at the producer level or higher on Patreon, and we are eternally grateful for your kindness, generosity, and fandom. Alan Abraham, Morgan Ashley, Saul Balcazar, Taylor Barkley, Martin Beck, Tyler Bello, Mark Boggio, Zach Bonham, Barrett Boswell, Cody Bradbury, Spencer Brand, Miguel Brewer, Lennon Brixey, Josh Bushing, Austin Bullock, Dylan Burns, Chris Buston, Alex Cabrera, Bjorn Campbell, Patrick Carper, William O'Carroll, Brian Chan, Sean Chandler, David Chestnut, Rodney Coleman, Brad Cooley, John Cordero, Gio Corsi, Philip Crone, Daniel Diamore, Colin Davenport, Jordan Detto, Jerome Ferreira, Joe Finelli, Eric Finkenbeiner, Chris Galvin, Darren Gardner, Connor Gashian, Alex Gates, Michael Gates, Jay Getter, Tyler Goodwin, Josh Gravelick, Miranda Grubba, Eric Harden, Tyler Harris, Richard Hebert III, Kyle Hagel, Robbie Hensley, Blake Israel, Azan Isa Al-Raisi, Josh Yeager, Paul Joyce, Greg Julips, Anton K, Jeremy Key, Auntie Kinnanen, James Kinslow III, Ryan R. Kittredge, Bo Clant, Kevin Komaki, Mason Cadillac, Greg Latta, Don Q. Lee, Ray Leja, Patrick Leslie, Avery Lewandowski, Keith A. Lewis, Chad Lewis, Lewin Ray Loper, Kevin R. Lord, Colin Love, Scott Lovelace, Josh M., Ryan T. Mandel, Daniel Maraca, Ross Maranka, Matt Martin, Sean Mason, John McCarthy, Josh McKinney, Joe McPartlin, Raul Melendez, Chris Moore, Andrew Morgan, Betty Ann Moriarty, Ryan Murdoch, George Newton, Daryl E. Naiman, Stephen Nieder, Adam Nix, Donnie Nolan, George A. Nunez, Jesse Owen, Jorge Palomino, James Pappas, Andrew Parker, Zach Parsley, Daniel Parsons, Todd Paxton, Marius S. Peterson, Gerald Pennington, Matthew Perdue, Enrique Perez, Jason Pettit, Travis Plymel, Jeff Pollard, Lawrence F. Prokop, Nathan R., Isaac E. Renteria, Peter Reynolds, Shane Rayum, Jonathan Rice, Petra Rose, A.G. Rowe, John Scholz, Michael Shanholtz, Toby Shootman, Gregory Slovinsky, Joshua Smallwood, Christian Stewart, Ahmad Tamar, Ben Thompson, Carl Tolman, Alan Tremblay, Constantino Di Valencia, Michael Vecchio, Justin Wagaman, Isaac Wastman, Damon Weathers, Mike Wayant, Corey Wyatt, Tony Zuniga, Galja, Casual Misfits Gaming, Homeworld Hub, Current Gen Podcast, Sticks and Crits, Eskimona Phono, Stellar Brooks, Throw 7, McDog 18, Infinite, Boots, Organic Produce, TB Lightning, Mad Mock Media, Bloody Fang, Mubarak, Vexius, Richter 86, Hugo's Desk, Of Fortuna, Gamer Filmaholic, and Megadet.